All right, we are live. Welcome to another episode of 10 Horse Money Fishing YouTube channel, Tuesday night live. And I've got one of my new favorite people on the other end, Mr. Ed Gettys, Kentucky Lake legend. And, you know, I'd heard about Ed over the years, and I'd seen him at BFLs and stuff, but never actually talked to him. And I had the opportunity to fish and room with him at the Pickwick Regional here just, I don't know, 3 weeks ago, something like that. And, we had a fun time, and he was telling a lot of really cool stories. And I thought, man, he needs to come on here and just share some of his information and his stories and stuff, because I was just sitting there. We talked for a long time. What do you got in that cup over there? You got sweet tea in there?
Water.
I'm surprised. You drink more sweet tea than anybody I know.
At home I drink all water, and on restaurants I drink sweet tea.
Okay.
Believe it or not, I don't have any sweet tea in this house.
Yeah.
I just drink water at home.
When we went to breakfast, I ordered coffee and you ordered sweet tea.
Always.
That's that Southern in you, I guess.
Probably. I grew up, my family drank sweet tea all the time. That was our number one beverage.
Yeah, we grew up drinking. I drink a lot of tea. My grandma used to make tea all the time, but it was unsweet. But she would have a little just a little container of that Splenda, just artificial sweetener. So we'd sweeten it up with, you know, artificial sweetener, but it always started out as unsweet, because I guess, I don't know, that way you can kind of do whatever you want with it. Some people don't like sweet tea. They can just have the unsweet, but if you wanted to put some sweetener in it, you can just add the sweetener to it. So you had more options that way, I guess.
We had a sugar bowl on the table.
Did you?
Yeah, it had a little spoon in, and we just put sugar in it so how we liked it.
Yeah, it's good. I'd typically, I'll get like a half and half if I go somewhere. I'll start out with the unsweet and then put a little bit of sweetener in there, and or actually a little bit of sweet tea in there, and just kind of give it a half and half. So we got a pretty good crowd in here tonight already. There's going to be some questions coming in, and we'll definitely touch them. So we were talking the other night about the Jetta Marine tournament. And, congratulations on that. You guys end up winning that, and that was pretty dang close. After we talked, I was kind of looking at the weights, and you got, what'd you have, like 19 something?
We had 19 pound, 1 ounce.
And then 18
high. I think 18 something, 18, 11, I believe was second. It was just ounces.
Yeah. That's tight. Did you, we were talking the other night, and you thought you didn't think you had it won, right?
No, I underestimated my weight a little bit. I thought we had closer to 18. But our two biggest ones were smallmouths, and sometimes they fool me. I thought they were a little smaller, but when he weighed the biggest one, it weighed 4.64, then I knew we were going to be close then. I mean, I really didn't think it was that big, but I didn't weigh it.
Yeah. That's okay. So you've been fishing Kentucky Lake for a while. Have you seen the cycle of smallmouth in the past, where it seems like right now smallmouth, I mean, there's a lot of big largemouth too, but it seems like smallmouth the last couple of years have been like the dominant species as far as most of the bags that you see in a tournament. It seems like there's going to be at least 3 smallmouth in there. Have you seen over the years, have you seen it cycle like that, or what's your thoughts on that?
I have seen it. It's a definite cycle. I'm pretty positive. I started fishing Kentucky Lake around 1990. I would come up here and spend a few days and either fish a series tournament or a PBF buddy trail. And I kind of fell in love with the lake, even though I was living in Guntersville at that time. But the first year I came up here, there was milfoil everywhere. There was mats of grass. It was beautiful, just like Guntersville. The next year when I came up here, it was almost gone. The third year it was gone. They sprayed it. And the largemouth fishing was unbelievable at that point. But after those 2 or 3 years, it cycled down fast, just like it did the last time. And so pretty soon, the largemouth bite was pretty weak, and the smallmouth bite started picking up. And the smallmouth seem to like it better when there's not much grass or not any. And so smallmouth became the dominant species back then. And then the grass started gradually coming back. The largemouth started increasing. And by 2015, the largemouth population was unreal. This lake was unbelievable. It was really easy to catch a lot of largemouths. And then the grass vanished, and the same cycle repeated. The largemouths started going away. The smallmouths started getting better. And it's happened twice in my time I've been up here.
Okay.
So basically, it's smallmouths without grass, largemouths with grass. It's the dominant one.
I'm gonna bring Jonathan in here.
What's up, guys?
Get your grub on.
I did. I had it's Taco Tuesday, so
It's Taco Tuesday.
She whipped up some tacos real fast, and
Nice.
I had a big bowl of tacos. I'm not gonna lie.
Sounds good. That's kind of like our Wednesday thing. We go eat Mexican on Wednesdays. I mean, you know that. You've seen his.
Well, there's a good chance we might go up there tomorrow night for Mexican.
Yeah. Man, I could eat Mexican like 3 or 4 times a week. It's just
every night for me.
Yeah, it's just good stuff. What about the spotted bass, Ed? What do you think about the spotted bass population? And because I've heard, like, you know, I've talked to Menendez before, and he was telling me a time when there was a pretty good population of spotted bass in Kentucky Lake.
Yeah, believe it or not, my biggest spot out of this lake's about 4 pounds, but I haven't caught one this year, I don't think.
Huh.
There were more spots. It seemed like to me there were more spots back in the past. Right now, I mean, where I fish, I'm not catching any. I don't even catch little ones. You can go over in Barkley and fish toward way up to Cumberland and catch them. And if you go down to I-40 and fish from there to the dam, you'll catch a few of them. But in the mid-lake here around Parish, I'm not catching any.
Yeah, I've caught a few, but they've been like 12, 13 inches. You know, just a couple times practicing this year for the BFLs.
Right.
But I think
the way I fish, you know, I don't fish to catch them too good around here. I'm constantly throwing big spinner baits and big stuff, trying to catch big fish. And you catch them better when you throw Carolina rigs or shaky heads or little crankbaits. I grew up on spots, you know, in Alabama, but around here, I've not been catching them at all.
I tell you what's coming on strong is the sauger. There's like a big sauger population now in Kentucky Lake.
Now, I've caught some of them. I'll catch them occasionally on the little minnow scoping or on a big crankbait or something like that. I've caught several sauger this year. Some pretty good ones.
Yeah, I caught them when I was down there fishing with Darius. I guess it was this spring. I was catching them I caught a couple on a spinner bait up shallow around the flowers. You know, when the lake was up, they were up there. I guess
right.
On it. I don't know what they were doing, but they were up there.
No telling.
Yeah, exactly. It's a pretty cool fish, as long as you don't lip it.
Right.
Are they as good eating as the walleyes are?
Everybody tells me they're great eating, but I have never eaten one.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I hear nothing but good about them as far as for food.
Right.
Yeah, I imagine they're pretty good. I mean, if they're anything like walleye, they're good. Stephanie wants to know: Are you still a captain for any high school fishing teams?
I am not at the present. I was a captain the last 3 years. I had 2 girls, Chloe Bisnicki and Charlie Hudson, I fished with for 2 years. And we had a great time. We traveled around. They qualified for nationals. And they did pretty well. They qualified 3 different ways. And so they were fishing good. Last year, I had a girl and a boy that we didn't fish nearly as much. And we didn't qualify, but they went different directions. And right now, I don't have a team. It's possible I'm going to do one next year, but it's not positive.
Yeah. We got Mr. Clint Knight in here. He says, congratulations, Ed, on the Jetta win. Good job. He wasn't too far behind you.
No, he's always around me. I mean, he's either in front or behind or right by me. We were even right together on the draw down there at Pickwick. We were like 70, 71. But yeah, he's a good fisherman. He's always going to be up there.
Yeah, there's a handful of those guys that seem like they're always in the check line down there. That's a lot of
Right. I tell you, it's really strong on Kentucky Lake right now. It has really got tough. And then you can go by how they go and do in these series and these national tournaments. They're right up there at the top on that too. A lot of these local guys are really good at it.
Yeah.
So this lake's got some tough fishermen.
Yeah, it does. It always has. It's always produced just some. I mean, there's several. You got Menendez, you got Moorhead, and Jake Lawrence is fishing the BPT next year, and there's just a bunch of guys from that area over the last however many years have been at the top level in bass fishing.
And then the Troders have always been
that's right.
Big competition. When I first came up here, they were winning about everything. And they've been a really good deep ledge fisherman through the years.
We got Mr. JoJo Wash. He stopped by to say hi. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, so JoJo's our friend.
What's that?
Been a few years since I fished the BFLs, and the hammers are still there, right? Like I look at the standings after every tournament, and it's still the same old that's in the top 10, 20 every tournament. So
that's kind of true on most lakes. There's always a handful of people that are really good that dominate.
Even with the scoping and all that, when I was down there, that wasn't even a thought in anybody's brain. And now, even with it, the guys that were winning are still winning. The guys that were still in the top are still in the top. You may have a random one here and there, but we had random ones back when I was fishing it. So,
right.
It definitely.
There's always somebody that sneaks in there and wins one. And then some people, they don't start off good, but they become good.
Mm-hmm.
They start working hard and they suddenly are in the mix.
Absolutely.
So how'd you get into tournament fishing, and how long has it been since you started fishing?
I've always liked to fish. My granddaddy had a 3-acre pond, and I used to go up there. He had a farm. He had every kind of animal you could think of. And I used to go up there and stay all the time, help him take care of all that stuff. But he had a pond. There's 3 acre, a couple small ones. And he took me fishing when I was about 3 or 4 years old, and I kind of fell in love with it. First, I was just a bluegill fisher, and then I started bass fishing, and I really liked that. But we moved to Logan Martin Lake when I was 15, when they first brought the water up, and that got me on a bigger body of water. And I just fished because I loved it. And then I took a job at DAR High School near Guntersville, on Guntersville Lake, at Grant, Alabama. And one of my basketball players, Dad, was a really good fisherman at Guntersville. He was a legend, Billy Ledbetter. And I got to fishing some with him, and they had a club, and he invited me to join the club. And as soon as I did that, I had to have a boat, and I went and bought a boat. And from there on, I've been fishing tournaments, and I'm real competitive, and I like sports, and it feels a niche, to have something where you can compete. So I really compete hard at it, and I always have since I started. But Billy got me started at Guntersville, and he taught me a lot about grass fishing. I was a ledge fisherman before I ever went up there. I learned that at Logan Martin, but Billy taught me a lot about grass. And then we eventually teamed up, and we did really well together. We won a lot of tournaments. And it's just kind of gone from there. I gradually started fishing the BFLs and that kind of thing, and a little bit of everything. I fished a little bit of all of it.
What was your first boat?
Oh, you would ask that. I can't even.
Was it a glass boat or aluminum boat?
Yeah, it was a 16-foot boat with 150. Oh, I'm trying to think what it was. If you had to ask me how I could tell you, but I might think of Procraft.
A Procraft, okay. Yeah.
And I've had several Rangers and I eventually got on a team with Stratus. I was sponsored by Stratus for a long time until they got bought up by Bass Pro Shops, and then they ended all the deals for just about everybody. I think Larry Nixon was the only one they kept. But since then, I've went Ranger to Phoenix.
Yeah, so you had a little bit of everything, really.
Yeah, I fished the most in Stratus, Ranger, and Phoenix.
I remember Procraft from. Wasn't that Bill Dance? Didn't Bill Dance fish out of Procraft, or am I thinking of that wrong?
I really don't know.
I think
they were popular. They were popular back in the 80s. But anyway, I had one of them, and then eventually I went to a Ranger, and then the Stratus.
Here's a question from Stephanie. I actually saw this too, and I was going to ask you about it. She says, I saw where Ed fished a Ranger M1 tournament in '99. What is that tournament? Is it sponsored by Ranger Boats, or was it?
It was sponsored by Ranger Boats. It was in Florida, but they had it in a weird place. They had it down there at it's a lakes where they ski all the time, Cypress Gardens. And it was a series of ponds, more or less, connected by canals. It was a small area, but the fishery was really bad. It was hard to get a bite. But they were advertising as winning $1 million, I believe. It's what they called M1. And you fished 2 days, they made a cut. You fished again, they made a cut. I made the first cut, didn't make the second cut. The bad thing is that we got one right where I started. But there was so many people there, I let it sway me to leave. And I guess I should have come back to it after I made the cut, and it was down to 20-some people. But it was a big money tournament, TV, all the works, except they didn't have it on a very good lake. You know, we wish they'd had it over. We're just a little ways from Toho and Okeechobee and all those places, but they had it at Cypress Gardens. And I think I had the biggest stringer one day was 6 pounds and something. Tell you how tough it was. It was tough.
The biggest stringer was 6 pounds?
One day I had like 6'9". I think that was the first or second biggest stringer that day.
Wow.
Now, the other day I had like 2 pounds. There just wasn't hardly anything called. They had to lower the limit. The limit at Florida at the time was like 14 inches. They talked them into lowering it to 12 because they were afraid we wouldn't let any fish in. It was just a really bad place. You know, it just wasn't a great fishery. It was more than well known for skiing. You know, at Cypress Garden, you had all the ski courses there, but for some reason they had it there. It was interesting, but it was just tough.
Well, that's not typical for a Florida fishery.
Sounds like that might have been a money thing.
They were catching 30-pound stringers 30 miles away at Toho at the same time. Would have loved to have been over there.
Lord.
Yeah, that's too bad, man. Making it hard on you.
So what level did you get to, Ed, in the bass fishing ranks? Did you ever turn 100% pro?
No. I thought about it. I had a good opportunity, but I passed it by. I won a Bassmaster Invitational at Guntersville. Back in those days, you didn't have to follow the tour to fish one.
Right.
You could put your deposit down and you go to the back of the line because they took their guys that were going to fish them all, you know, put them in there first. But Guntersville was the last tournament on the tour. And some of the people that weren't doing good would drop out. And they would go down. Back in those days, they go down the waiting list. So I got in the tournament 2 straight years. The first year I finished 5th. The second year I won it. And that was my opportunity to go pro because I was a deep fisherman then and I could find them on my own. And they fished a lot of tournaments that were deep oriented where you could go out on ledges and not many people could do it. So that was my golden opportunity, but I loved to coach kids so much I wouldn't give it up. I was coaching girls basketball and tennis and other sports, and I just would not leave it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand that. I can understand that.
I had a great love for that too. You know, I love fishing, but I had a great love for coaching.
Yeah. Do you regret that, or what are your thoughts on that now?
It's mixed emotions. I had a lot of good times coaching. I had success. I coached in 5 state championship games while I was coaching girls basketball, and we won 1, lost 2 on the last second shot. We were close to winning several, and I got final 8 a couple more times. And I've had state ranked teams in softball and cross country and tennis, but I just couldn't give it up. I just love that too much. So
yeah.
Sometimes I wonder what might have happened, because David Fritz really did well back in cranking. And it was actually he and I that were cranking against each other at Guntersville. He finished 3rd and I was 1st. And I could really good at finding fish back in those days on ledges without much. In fact, I never got help doing it. I always found my own fish. And I think I could have done well back then, but I passed it by.
Do you think, was there a lot of people getting help back then? Was that a common thing? Because you hear about it nowadays, but has that been going on forever?
It's been going on forever. It's not everybody does it, but a lot of people do it. I've actually helped people. I'm not going to call names, but I've helped several pros. And it wasn't illegal back then. You could get help legally. They weren't cheating. They were just, getting help from locals. It was very common.
Yeah.
But we never did anything illegal. I never gave any illegal help.
Yeah.
Never got requests for any, illegally.
That was like those 150s, wasn't it? It wasn't coing. It was like boater on boater draw type of deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was boater. When I fished that BAS, there were in the neighborhood of 350, 375 people paired up, boater.
I didn't know it was that big. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah, it's 300 plus. But if you think about it, if it was co-liners, and you had 180 boaters, 180 co-liners, that's 360.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that's
but
true.
Then it was you were just boater. And that's the only way they did it, so nobody thought much about it back then. It was just the way they do it. And I started on the Red Man Trail, too, and it was the same way. But I rarely fished in the back. They usually let me have the front. You didn't have. It was their choice. They could take half the day, or they could let you stay up there.
Well, how did that work? Like the ones that you fished, was it just like you had a meeting the night before and they paired you up, and then you talked? How did you find out who? Walk us through that. Like, how did you find out who you were fishing with?
Well, it was very similar to. It was very similar to meetings that you've gone to recently. Of course, it kind of quit since COVID, but when when you have your meeting, you meet your partner at the meeting. So we met our partners at the meeting, and you get with your partner, and you have to decide whose boat you're going in, and who's going to run it the first 4 hours, and who's going to run it the second 4 hours, or if you're even going to do it that way. You didn't have to do it that way, but if they wanted their 4 hours, you had to give it to them. So if they insisted on their boat and you wanted yours, you flipped. Everyone that flipped got their boat. And then you decided who was going to go to their fish first. And if you couldn't decide, you flipped for that. Now, I've never flipped. We always went in my boat. And but some people flip, because some people, they both wanted their boat. But that's basically what it was solved. It's just a coin toss. And unless they could come up without doing it. We were always figured it out. And so most of the time I went in my boat. I don't think I've ever been in somebody else's boat. Now, I didn't fish a ton of them. They switched it from that format to co-liner pretty quick on BFL, from the old Red Man. It didn't stay that way long. So I wasn't involved with it that way a lot, mostly when I fished BAS.
What heck, Ed, when you found all that stuff back in the day, you didn't have all the stuff that you have now. We were talking about that. You were a pioneer.
I'm as old school as it gets. Heck, nobody's more old school than me fishing deep. When I lived at Logan Martin, we had no map. I had a John boat, 12-foot, a 5.5 horsepower Wizard to run around the lake in. You know, sometimes it was paddle power, and I just had a paddle. And I was 16 to 20 years old at just when I was doing this. But what I did is I started reading about deep fishing on Bassmaster. I started subscribing pretty early. I wasn't chartered, but I wasn't far. You know, I heard about deep fish and it intrigued me. So I would troll a hellbender, the bigger one, behind the boat and go around the lake and try to find, you know, deep stuff trolling. And a lot of people did that. You didn't even have a map, didn't have sonar, didn't have anything. So I would troll, and if that hellbender hit the bottom, I had it figured it would troll 14 foot deep. And so I knew if I hit the bottom, I was in 14 foot, which is a good depth to catch them on most lakes. And a lot of times, the instant that thing hit bottom, I'd catch one. And then I would kind of get a little line up on it. And then I started trying to go back, figure out exactly where it was. I would take a rope and a piece of a block, a concrete block. I tied the rope around the block, and I would drop it over the side, and it would be like 20 foot. I'd get close by my lineup, and I'd start dropping it. So I started going up the ledge. And when I get to the top of the ledge, I would anchor down kind of on the lineup where I caught them trolling, and I would fan cast with an old cream purple worm. And I caught a ton of them after doing it that way. I found schools where you could get 30 bites on 30 casts. Nobody was fishing them. I mean, they were virgin schools. And it was really neat. And then when the first depth finder, I think it was one of them old green box looking, I don't even remember the brand, but as soon as I heard about that, I saved up my money and bought one. It was one of them that you put in your boat and had 2 rubber suction cups to stick it on the side to put the transducer down in the water. And I was in hog heaven because now I didn't have to drop that rope. And so now I use that to find it. And they didn't have good maps for Logan Martin for a long time. And so anyway, I became a ledge fisherman after that. I fished all over that lake fishing ledges.
I just think about, you know, you talk about you helped coach some of the youth teams, and I think now, like, just the kids that we have now, there's some kids out there that want it, but you talk about 16 to 20, how bad did you want it? Like, to tie a rock to a rope, essentially, and go out in the middle of the lake and not have the stuff that we have now. And you didn't know that it even would exist in the years to come, but you wanted it bad. I guarantee you there wasn't many 16-year-olds out there fishing alongside of you.
No, I was about the only person out there fishing deep. They was wondering what I was doing.
Well, I'm just talking about even fishing in general. Like, I know it wasn't when I was growing up. Heck, it wasn't cool to be a fisherman. And I know Gabe is in the same boat. Like, we got looked at funny when we said we were going to go fish a derby on a Saturday.
Right.
But
yeah, you know, I'd give anything to have been able to fish high school.
Oh my God!
You know, I absolutely would ate that up. But you know, we didn't have nothing like that. You know, I had to play the traditional sports, and I played them. And but if I could have fished, I jumped all over it because I just loved it. I don't know why, but I loved it.
You know that guy right there, little BA.
Oh yeah,
old Brent.
BA, what's up, brother?
Yeah, I know Brent well. We fished some, talked a lot, shared a house a couple times. When he came to Guntersville, I let him use my house to stay in. Actually, I was living in East Tennessee, and he stayed there. And then I sold my house unexpectedly in Columbia. Didn't have a place to live. He let me stay with him until I found a place. So we know each other pretty well.
So you used to catch, they used to bite a hellbender. I was just looking at that thing. And compared to what we have nowadays, it's so prehistoric looking. I did at one time have a couple of those. I don't know that I ever threw it. I've heard guys say that it would come around stumps pretty good too with that big lip.
Yeah, it jumped them pretty good. I rarely got hung. You know, it's funny when I fish Logan Martin, you could throw a hellbender out there all day. You didn't hardly ever lose it. There wasn't any brush piles. There wasn't a bunch of junk on the bottom. And the best places to catch them at Logan Martin were bare, just slick on the bottom. It was not around a bunch of crap. And I didn't fish Logan Martin for a long time. When I went back, they had so many brush piles on it, I couldn't even throw a crankbait on a lot of it. I'd get home. Everybody thought brush piles were the answer.
How many good ledges on the Tennessee River have been screwed up because somebody dropped a brush pile on it?
A bunch. My thought on it is, I learned it at Logan Martin. If the fish used to place naturally on Logan Martin, a lot of times it'd be a pretty good school and show up at the end of May when they get off bed, just like they do on Kentucky Lake. And they'd stay there till July, maybe. And then they'd start disappearing. They'd scatter out, just like they do here. June was always a hot month. Well, some of these people thought, well, they don't have any cover on it. Everybody knew that. A lot of them didn't have cover at all. And they thought, well, if we put some cover down there, some brush, they'll stay all the time. So I know some people that put brush on them and they ruined them. Instead of going up there in June and catching 10 or 15 big ones on it, or good ones, maybe not all big ones, but all of a sudden they were just catching like one little spot or one little largemouth that changed the whole ledge. And when they come off bed and they go out on ledges, they don't want a bunch of junk around them. They want to get out there with a shed where they can chase them and roam freely. And most of my best ledge places on Kentucky don't have a lot of cover. And in Sandy, there's so many crappie beds in there. I think it's messed it up from that point of view. It's changed it into fish of 10 crappie beds to catch one good fish, as you used to just pull up on that ledge and catch a bunch of them. I think it messes them up. I would never put a brush pile in a place that was already good.
Hey,
I think it messes it up.
When Brent was staying at your house, did he have any poisonous snakes along with him?
No, but he talked about snakes. Brent loves snakes. He just reached down there and grabbed them. Where most people run from, he go pick it up.
I forgot about that when we had him on there.
Oh, he's a snake lover for sure.
Yeah,
he's
he
a snake
is.
lover.
Yes, he is.
I'm not scared of them if I know where they're at. My only fear is the one I don't know where he's at.
I've got a respect for him. Let's just put that.
Yeah, I'm the same way. Something happened to me the other day. I'll admit it because I'm not ashamed to say it. But there was a little black piece of rope out in my garage, and I was doing something. I can't remember what I was doing. I think we had a bunch of flies in our house for about 2 weeks, and they finally dissipated. But they sprayed all these fields over here. We got cornfields across from us, and they plowed them up and sprayed that liquid fertilizer on there, and it attracted all the flies. But I think I was occupied like swatting flies or something. And for some reason, I looked down and there's I don't know, it's about probably 18, 24-inch piece of black rope. And it was squiggled up right underneath, just right behind my boat tire there. And I looked down there and I actually jumped. It scared the crap out of me for a little bit. I thought it was a snake, and I'm like, so you never know when I don't care who you are. If you look down and you see a snake, you're going to jump. It's kind of like a primitive reaction that we have as human beings. We're going to jump when we see a snake.
The closest I've ever come to being bitten was in a really odd place. I lived in a basement. We had a nice house that had a basement and an upper level, and my bedroom was in the basement, and we had a playroom down there where we had the ping pong tables, and Daddy had his garage and his tools, and Daddy liked to do stuff with tools, so we had a lot of tools. But if you went through the garage door, you could go through another door and get in my room. It was on that level. Well, one night I walked into my bedroom, flipped the light on, started to step, and there was a copperhead straight under my foot. I was fixing to step on him, a big one, in my bedroom. Had I stepped without turning the light on, I would have hit him. I just stepped right on him. And that would have been a surprise.
Yeah. You might not.
But he ran up into the vacuum cleaner hose, and I grabbed it, held it up where he couldn't get out, took it outside, and let him go.
Yeah, I don't know. Luckily, I don't have a whole lot of snake stories. I mean, I've had one fall on my boat one time. I got hung up underneath some overhanging trees, and I was trying to break it off, and I couldn't break it off. So I get in there, and it's pretty tight in there, and I hear a thump on the back deck of my boat, and I turned around, and sure enough, there's a snake had fallen out of that tree and landed on the back of my boat, and there was like a kind of a little standoff there for a minute, and it ended up just kind of shooting off the side and went off and back into the water. But thank God it went. It didn't come towards me, and it went the other way, because I don't know what I would have done. It'd been pretty sketchy.
I think the worst part is when they disappear in your boat. They get down in a compartment, or they crawl into the hole under the console.
In your rod locker or something, and you're like, where'd they go?
Fortunately, I've never had a snake encounter in the boat.
I haven't either. I actually I had one the other day hanging trail cameras for deer hunting, and I had my back. I was hanging the camera, and I turned around. I'm looking at the camera, making sure everything's on. I look in this tree that I was literally just leaning against, and there's a black snake sitting in it. Like, he could have easily tagged me in the head if he wanted to while I was standing there. We were 2 foot apart. So
yeah,
but
we got a bunch of good questions in here. But I want to get back before we start throwing some questions out. I want to get back to the early days of ledge fishing, and you talked about having to use a rope and a block to find the ledges, and then using the hellbender. And Logan Martin and in the small pond is how you kind of figured some of that stuff out. When you moved to Kentucky Lake, how did you break that lake down? Because once again, I mean, this is still, we're still pre like GPS map, right? On those days.
When I first fished Kentucky Lake, all we had was paper maps and sonar.
Okay.
We didn't have side imaging, down imaging, or any mapping on your units. It was just I would go up to these tackle shops around here, and there was a map. I don't remember what it had. A lot of ads on it on the back, but it was pretty accurate. It showed the bottom pretty good, and I used that map. But actually, I first started fishing up here a long time before I moved up here. I moved up here in 2015. I started up here in 1990 some. I don't remember the exact day, but it was early 90s. And I came up here to fish the old PVF trail. And so we came up here, and my partner and I came up here, Billy Ledbetter, and he loved to ledge fish too. And he said, well, we need to get somebody to show us where to fish. And I said, let's see if we can do it by ourselves. I said, I want to see if we can find them on our own. And so I went out there, and he took his boat, and I took my boat, and I went out there and started hunting in Sandy. And I probably caught 20-something pounds the first day I put my boat in the water on Sandy. And we finished third in that tournament, that PBF. It was 7 fish limit. We had 28 pounds. Schroeder's won it. They had a little over 30, I think. But that was my first time here. But what I do is, first thing you had to do was figure out where you're at. When you got a map and you got a big lake, you got to find something that's easy to find, like a point on the map. And when I get on the point, you can idle over it or whatever to find it. And then from there, I would just use the depth finder and follow it around and throw a crankbait and run through sections of that map that looked good. And I could find any place on the lake as soon as I figured out where I was on the map. Where I was sitting. I could go and hit everything else. So when I'd go around stuff, my depth finder, I'd say, well, if I'm in the right place, it ought to turn to the left right here. Sure enough, it turned left. And I just followed it around with my depth finder. I was pretty good at following stuff. I could keep it like 19 foot and stay on it, basically drawing my own contour lines and looking at the map to see if it matched. I'm not really drawing it, but, in my mind. So I had a good mental picture of what was going on under me. I just had a knack for it, and I could find them pretty easy. The first day I fished, I found 4 or 5 schools. In fact, I found a place that the Schroeders won the tournament on, but they were ahead of us, so they were on it, so I never fished it. I'm still never caught there again.
Now you had that on the trolling motor. You didn't have that on the console, your depth finder, correct?
I had a little, it probably wasn't but like a 7-inch Lowrance or Humber. I don't even remember what I had. I've had both. I think it was a little 7-inch one up there at the trolling motor. And I'd be sitting up there. I always sat in the seat in those days. It was a lot easier cranking a seat instead of a butt seat. I was in a real seat. And I would just be sitting there, and you could see your depth finder real good and work the trolling motor, and I'd throw a crank, prop it up against my hip. And I could crank all day. I could do it all day. And I really power fished Sandy. I went around about every hump out there. And every now and then you'd hit a screw, and then you had to line it up, make sure you could get back on it. So I learned how to line them up. And what I did is I would find two things. First, I'd throw a buoy out back in those days when I caught them. And then I would look for something on the bank, two things in line that you could line directly up that lined up where you were sitting. And then you back off, and I'd go up to it with the flasher and use the depth as my third one. Instead of triangulating, I ran straight lines. And the depth would be my third triangulation. So when I got to 18 foot, I'd be sitting right on the line I was casting, and I could throw on the fish first cast after I found them. I never had any problem getting back to them.
Wow. Did you write a lot of that stuff down? Like, so you could
I did up here, because this lake is big and it was hard to remember the lineups because a lot of them are pretty distant.
Yeah.
And especially if you go up around like Duncan Bay or Pisgah Bay or somewhere and get out in the middle. That stuff out there back in those days, it was tough because it was hard. I could get on it, but it was really hard to line it up because it was hard to find something that lined up, in line. Sometimes you had to do a little more of a triangulation out there where you looked another direction. But if I could find something to line up straight line, that's what I always did. But it's tough out there in the middle of a big body.
When you got to Kentucky Lake, how many guys were doing this?
A handful.
Okay.
The most notable ledge fishermen were the Schroeders. Lashley started getting pretty good at it. He and I talked a lot about it through the years, about ledge fishing. But he got really good at it. And there were some others, but I remember the Schroeders because they won. They either finished first or second, I think, in the first 3 terms I fished. We finished third, first in the first 3, and I think they finished first, second or something like that. I might not be exact, but I'm ballpark. They were really good. They were jig strokers, and everybody up here was stroking jigs back in those days. And we came over and threw crankbaits, and they'd really seen them a lot, and they really bit them. So we got people throwing that.
What was your crankbait of choice then?
Well, the only one that would run deep enough when we first came up here was a Man's 20 plus. It didn't run 20 foot on 10-pound line. It ran about 17, maybe.
Right.
On a long cast. We used 10-pound line and the old 5500C reels and tried to throw it a mile so you could get it down there, but you have to throw a long cast to get it, 17, 18 foot. That's about as deep as I ever got one that I know of.
Could you even throw it a mile? Those are tough to throw.
I actually could throw it a long ways.
Yeah.
Eventually I switched to Calcuttas.
Okay.
They really threw it. They were really smooth. But I used 5500C for a long time. Most everybody did.
Did you have
Calcutta came out there.
Did you have like a 7? Were there 7.5 to 7'10" rods back there to throw those crankbaits, or what kind of rods?
I mostly had a 7.2, 7.3, 7.4 range.
Okay.
Eventually, they came out with longer ones, 7.6. I even had some bigger than that. I never went much bigger than that. I was more comfortable with something between 7.3 and 7.4.
Mm-hmm.
7.2 works. If you got a really good reel, you can throw it 7.2 pretty far.
Yeah. You got the right rod, it loads up properly. You can get it out.
Yeah, you need a little bit of tip on it. You don't want a stiff one. You want a medium or medium heavy, depending on how the rod works, but I like one that's a little bit soft that'll bend. You know, the more it bends, the easier it was to play the fish and to throw it. To throw the plug. The plug would load up better. And then the fish loaded.
Fiberglass? Was that a fiberglass rod?
Yeah, in the day it was. I eventually used some graphite ones, but I used graphite ones that were not very stiff. But we used a lot of fiberglass.
Yeah. What do you? So do you still use glass today, or like a composite?
No. Now I just basically go with a medium heavy crankbait rod or just a medium heavy rod. But I still try to find one that's got some bend in it. You know, it's not stiff. I don't like it stiff. You know, I'll try to find one about 7.4. But I want one that's got some flex. It just throws it better and plays the fish better. But I don't always use glass anymore. I've got one old glass rod, an old KVD rod. And it's glass, and I probably used that thing for 25 years, and I still got it. It hadn't tore up.
Is that the red one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kind of reddish looking, yeah.
Those are some gems right there.
Yeah, I've still got one in my boat right now. I cranked with it all summer.
It's got a handle on it, or a butt of the blank is about like that.
That's exactly right. It's big.
Yep.
I've actually got two of them. One of them I need some new guides on. A couple of guides came off, but I still got it. It ain't broke yet.
Got a good buddy that's got a handful of those as well, and those are some sweet rods, especially for deep cranking.
They are. So yeah, I do use one glass rod because I use that this summer a lot, but I use the graphite rod too, but it's just softer.
Yeah. And then what came after the Man's 20 plus? Did you what about colors? Did you have many color options back then on those crankbaits? Well,
when I won the Bassmaster, I caught those fish on a solid chartreuse Man's 20 plus. It was nothing but chartreuse, caught the majority of them.
Huh.
And I fished with a Bo Dowden second day, and I told him when I was catching them on, he said, well, bring me some. I don't own any. I brought him 3, and he came out there with an old brown looking one, and he wouldn't put the chartreuse one on. And I caught him all day, and he ended up with about 16. I ended up about 27 pounds, and we were on a lot of fish. He could have, he caught them, but never caught any big ones. And he said, end of the day, he said, I know I should have put that chartreuse one on, but I could not believe they would bite that thing. And he never threw it. But that's what I caught them on. But we got Mans to make. Somewhere we found one with a chartreuse and a blue back. And we got Mans to make them. They had a powder blue back and a chartreuse side. And there is no telling how many bass I've caught on that color. And that color has evolved to every crankbait. You can buy it on about any brand now. But we got Mans to make that color way back there, late 80s, early 90s. They used to give us some plugs, and we got them to make they made us a big order of them, and we used them for a long time. But eventually we switched to DD22s. It seemed like when you get a plug and use it a long time, they start getting used to it. And then the DD22 came out, it really caught. And it still does. The only problem with it is it didn't run any deeper. And finally, they came out with a suspend DD22. It would get a little deeper. And then from there, we went to through a lot of fat-free shed. They made a really nice crankbait. And then from there, it went 6XD. And to be honest, that's probably the best overall one that's been made. We caught a lot of fish on 6XDs. Same color, though. Chartreuse and blue was our number one. The powder blue and chartreuse side.
That's JB's. You can see JB's down there. That's his favorite color. That's a good color.
Now I throw other colors. I throw a few shad patterns, but day in and day out, I can't hardly beat chartreuse and blue. And for me, it just I got confidence and I catch them on it. I caught them on all summer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there's two on the boat right now. I guarantee you. In my boat, I guarantee you.
I'd say it's probably the number one seller.
Yeah. I remember the first time I saw that too. I was like, there's no way a fish is going to bite that thing. And yeah, by halfway through the morning, I'd changed my mind. The guy I was fishing with was catching them on it. But I guess it's just that, I don't know. They say, I've heard that chartreuse shows up as white after it gets so deep in the water column. So we're seeing it out of the water as chartreuse, but a fish is more likely seeing it as some sort of white color.
Right. The colors, the red color disappears at first, I believe, and I think yellow's second, and I think blue goes to furthest, and then purple, green. So, you hear about red all the time, but red's one that changes colors too quick.
Mm-hmm.
And like red hooks, if they're down 10 foot deep, they're not red because that wavelength never gets there. A lot of people don't know that, but red only goes 10 feet in clear water. Chartreuse, now I will say this, that I went to Seminole one year and there was a wall of hydrilla down the Spring Creek, and I got this wild notion to throw that chartreuse crankbait up the side of that wall, and that water was so clear that I watched that thing go down that wall all the way to my boat and never got out of sight. And it was running about 17, 18 foot deep. I never lost sight of it. And it was chartreuse in that kind of water. But if it's stained, it filters the light out a lot quicker and it changes it.
And you'll catch them in the clearest water on that chartreuse powder blue back too. Well,
I didn't catch them in Seminole in that place with it. I've caught them in water where it's 4 foot, 3 or 4 foot. I don't think it's the best color if it's really clear. I think you're probably better off going to shad color. But it'll catch them in reasonably clear. Tennessee River water never gets too clear for it.
No.
I've always been able to catch them on it.
Yeah, I'll still, what Cedar Lake will get 5-6 foot of visibility in the best time in the summer.
Yeah, they'll hit it in that. Yeah.
They have no problem hitting it on that.
No. They might hit it in even clear water. I've never really tried it in a really clear lake. But I don't fish that many really clear lakes.
All of our intuition says to not throw that in the super clear lake. But then when you go up to, unless you're in a smallmouth fishery and then you're throwing a straight chartreuse, jerk shad or a fluke bait, and smallmouth crush it. So
I'd say the smallmouth would eat it if it went in front of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've seen them throw it at Devil's Kitchen. It is a small lake in southern Illinois. It's got about 15 foot of visibility. I've seen some of the locals throw orange, like bright orange crankbaits. It's got a lot of standing timber. So I think, with it bouncing around on that standing timber, you're just getting like a reaction strike. But that's the first time I saw anybody actually throwing just a solid orange crankbait was a Devil's Kitchen. And this is like 25, 30 years ago. But yeah, they'd sit on the outside of that standing timber and just throw up in it with those, deeper diving crankbaits. But they were bright orange or bright yellow. They were just ugly, but they had plenty of confidence in them. So I guess they've caught fish on them before.
Not the only orange ones I've ever thrown are real shallow ones. I've never done it with a big one. I don't know. I just never picked that color up to throw deep.
Well,
I thought it in timber.
Will you throw that chartreuse blueback shallow?
I will on a small crankbait.
Yeah.
Like a square bill or something that runs 4 or 6 foot. I still throw it.
Hey, when we were talking the other night, you got to talking about you had a story about Kevin VanDam.
Who's that?
Right. I had a friend that started fishing the Pro Tour at the same time Kevin did. This is when he first started. This was like early 90s, 89, 90, somewhere around there. And that was the time I won a PBF at Kentucky Lake. We caught 6 that weighed 34 pounds there. We caught at the PBF at Guntersville, we caught 7 that weighed 47.11.
Dang.
And I won the Bassmaster at Guntersville.
I guess so.
That was 70 something for 3 days. And he asked my friend if he could get me to go fishing with him. He wanted me to go with him. So I met him at Logan Martin. There was going to be a classic at Logan Martin, and he was pre-fishing. And this was several weeks before. Back in those days, there was no rules. You know, you couldn't do it the week before a tournament, but you could do it pre-fishing.
Did you know who he was at all?
I knew of him, but he was just getting going. He was not as famous like he is now. He was just starting, but he'd already started doing good. He did good pretty quick. And so I agreed to go with him. So I met him at Logan Martin, and I met him there, and we went out and fished 2 days. And the reason he wanted me to go with him is he wanted somebody in the boat that had a lot of confidence in deep cranking. At the time, he had not done it hardly any. He was known for spinnerbait and jig and that type of stuff, fishing shallow. And so I went and practiced with him 2 days. Now, we actually were practicing. We weren't just going to throw a deep plug. So I learned some stuff because I got to see him practice firsthand for 2 days. And he was pre-fishing classes. You know, it was serious. And we went daylight to dark. I mean, he's like me. He goes at it hard. And like we would, if anybody ever tells you goes fast, they're telling the truth. Because I went around some of them coves throwing a buzzbait, and we had that trolling motor about as high as it'd go. And we were firing. And he said, all I want to do is get them to show themselves. I want to see if they're there. Don't care if we catch them. And he said, a lot of times you can throw a buzzbait around a pocket and find out if there's fish in it, you know, get an idea. And so we did a lot of that. And then we did some other stuff, throw spinnerbait some, but we cranked a lot. And he asked me questions about what I look for and stuff like that. And I didn't go with him showing places or anything like that, you know, as far as Logan Martin goes. It was strictly just as kind of a consultant on crankbait fishing. And we had a good time, and he's a good guy, and I really enjoyed it. But yeah, I told him what I knew about crankbait, and he, whatever he asked me, we talked about what you look for, stuff like that, just general stuff.
Did you think when you're in the boat with him, you know, he was just getting going, could you tell there was something special about him back then?
Oh, yeah. The first thing is people that do good work hard. And we're out there at the crack of light, and we take out at the crack of dark. I mean, it's dark, start dark, end dark. And he's all business. He's going as hard as he can go. And I've always been the same way. And I used to fish a little bit with Andy Morgan a long time ago, and he was the same way. He would be out there at daylight, stop at dark, and fish unbelievably hard. And that's 2 things they both have in common, is a really hard work ethic, really take it serious, pay a lot of attention to everything around them. You know, I noticed that about both of them. And I think that's the number one thing, is to work hard and pay attention to what's going on, stuff like that. A lot of guys, I've gone to a bunch of tournaments where it was like a federation, regional or something. And I remember going down to Florida, and we fished the St. John's, and I'd be the last boat in. I'd have to park in the road at the hotel. We had us all in one hotel. I had to run extension cord about 200 or 300 yards to charge my boat, and I had to park outside because I was the last one there every day. And a lot of them, they're in there at 1 o'clock, done gone home. You know, they're not after it that hard, but people that's gone with me know I stay at it, still do, even at 72. I can daylight to dark it. You've witnessed a little bit of it yourself.
Yeah, I had fun, man. I love it. I love it. I don't like going back in early. And I remember it was getting later on the day, and you wanted me to look up on the MLF app just to see what time we had to be off the water, because you wanted to get every bit of it out there.
I usually push it to the limit, and but Kevin I could tell that he had an intense desire to be good. You could see that. And he became really good. Everybody knows that, but he was a really hard worker and a very smart person. He really had an understanding of things quick. So he was really good.
Yeah. Did he seem efficient, even though he's fishing that fast? Did he seem like he was efficient with his casts and stuff?
Yeah. Yeah, he was meticulous. at that time. I actually think he mellowed on this, but he put every rod in a rod locker, and we would get one out. We each had our bug bait, and we just went bug bait. That's all we were going to do, and we had nothing in the way. We never had a rod get tangled because that's we only had two out. And then when we went and did something else, we'd take the crankbaits out, put the others back up. And he was meticulous about having everything neat back in. But I've noticed him fishing MLF. I noticed he had a few more rods on his boat later days, but it's hard to do it that way, you know, but back then he was real meticulous about things, and he kept that boat spotless. And anyway,
that's a good way. I mean, that's a good way to fish, is just keep one rod out, you know, if that way you don't get tempted to pick something else up. I mean, especially if you're pre-fishing, if you're just trying to find fish, you know.
When I was crankbait fishing, looking for ledge fish, I would have two crankbait rods and one Carolina rig. And that's what I'd have on front of my boat. So I wouldn't get in my way either. One problem with me is if I get a bunch of them up there, I'll start throwing them and get them tangled up, and you end up spending time untangling them. But back when I was crankbaiting, I usually put two up there in a Carolina rig and went at it.
Was it the same crankbait, or did you have different crankbaits on?
I usually had two colors. My two favorite colors were chartreuse and blue and pearl. The blue on the pearl is more sky blue. The blue on the chartreuse is more powder blue. And then the blue pearl, I've noticed it catches them really good deep. Seems like it really attracts them about 18, 20 foot deep. You're running something that runs that deep. So those are my two favorites, but I've used other colors, you know. Sexy Shad, I use that some, and various others.
Well, we talked about the crankbait. Like when we fished together, you were throwing a spinnerbait a lot, and that's something that, you know, most people at one time used to think of spinnerbait as like a shallow bait. You know, you're throwing around shallow cover. When did you start experimenting with like a spinnerbait out there deeper in ledge fishing? How'd that come about?
Well, I actually started fishing spinnerbaits deep at Guntersville in the grass.
Really?
You know, I would back off the grass at certain times of the year and run it down there 7 to 10 foot deep in that scattered grass. I caught a lot of big ones that way. And then we occasionally took a big spinnerbait and just throw it out in the middle of the ledge fish. And we'd either bring it up real fast and let it fall, or we'd real slow on the bottom. We caught some giants doing that, but we didn't catch a lot of fish doing that on the ledges. But we caught some really big ones. You know, we weighed in some 8.5, slow rolling that spinnerbait, or either hopping it and letting it fall. And so I'd used it some deep. But when I came up here, I started throwing it a lot up here in the deep. Well, we had grass when I first came up here, so I throw the spinnerbait in the deep grass a lot. And then I would throw it on stumps, on ledges in 7 to 10 foot of water, and they would bite it pretty good. It runs through stumps really well. And so I've been using a big spinnerbait for a long time. And at Seminole, I won a regional throwing the spinnerbait in October. I slow rolled it down the side of those hydrilla in about 7, 8, 10 foot of water and caught some really big ones down there. When I went down there pre-fished, I caught unreal fish doing it, but it hang on just enough for me to make the All-American doing it. But it's been a part of my fishing for a long time, slow rolling spinnerbaits.
How big of a spinnerbait on those ledges? Is it an ounce?
I throw 3/4 most of the time. So, you know, I never realized spinnerbaits ran as deep as they do, as easy as they do. When I was at Guntersville, I always felt like I wasn't quite getting it deep enough. But since I've had the forward-facing sonar on there and I watch them, I can fish them 18, 20 foot deep, a 3/4. If you throw it out there and you let it go to the bottom, and you get it all the way to the bottom, and you roll it just fast enough to turn the blades, I can keep it for the majority cast. I can keep it down there 17, 18 foot. I can watch it come in. You can watch it go through a brush pile or over a stump or just over the bottom. And I did not realize I could keep a 3/4. I used to get 1 ounce ones, but then when I found out I could keep the 3/4 down there, I felt like I lost more fish on the 1 ounce because it's easier to throw it. And so I started throwing the 3/4, and I can fish it really deep.
Number 6s?
The what?
Blades, number 6s?
I think the ones I'm throwing are 4 and 6.
Okay.
I have thrown 3 and 5. The smaller blades actually stay down a little better.
Right.
But I think the one I've got now, it may be a 5. It really don't say on the blade, but it's a pretty big blade. It's not little.
I got you. Is it custom or?
No, I'm actually throwing a Santone.
Okay.
They make a nice 3/4 1 ounce spinnerbait.
I got you.
Yeah, they're tough. They're tough. You catch a lot of fish on them. They don't ever break. They run pretty straight. They're easy to tune if they get off.
That's the hardest thing that I found. I throw a lot of that 3/4 in super shallow water, but you get a 3/4 ounce spinnerbait, and I don't know how many of those I've broke over the years, just because there's so much more there for them to whip around.
Yeah, that's been an issue with a lot of. When I used to fish Terminators, I loved them, but they was bad to break.
Mm-hmm.
You know that, and they finally quit making that tungsten wire. Didn't pan out. I don't think the way they hoped it would. It would still break.
If it wasn't tuned right, it wasn't right. It was hard to get that one to run right.
Yeah,
so. But
the Santone, they use 0.40 wire, which is standard. You know, on a big one, it's not extra big wire. But I don't know. The wire's just strong, and I've caught 20, 30 fish on one before. Usually I lose them before I break them. I have broke a couple, usually after a catfish has mangled it. And I have had 2 or 3 catfish mangled it, still catch 8 or 10 more bass on. Now I don't use them kind in a tournament, the ones that's been beat up, but I practice with them. But I've had very few of them break. Now they will break, but usually after a lot of abuse.
We got a couple questions here. Stephanie's always got a lot of good questions. What's your thoughts on this? Do you think 2 people should fish the same bait if one is catching them on that bait? Or do you think you should always fish 2 separate baits if you're like a team fishing, or say the Bassmaster 150?
When I fish with Billy on ledges, usually we both throw a crankbait when we pull up. We often throw a different color, but if one color starts standing out, we'd both throw it. We'd throw it till they quit biting. Then he would pick up a Texas rig worm. He loved to throw a Texas rig worm, and he was really good at it. He hopped it. It was kind of like the stroking with a jig, except he did it with a worm. And he had an unreal at doing it. He caught a lot of big fish. I would throw a Carolina rig or a jig. So that was our second round that we've used. And most of the time, that's what we did. We throw the jig, a Carolina rig, a Texas rig worm, and a big plug. And occasionally, late in the summer, the big spinnerbait would catch a big one. It seemed like it was better in the later summer. But we just had that routine. Now, fishing with co-anglers, I have seen co-anglers just totally mess up by trying to throw something different. And then again, I've seen it work where it was better. And if fish are really turned on, I think you're better off throwing what they're biting. I mean, if they're really biting if I'm catching one every throw, they need to be throwing it too, I think. So they're going to bite it if you get in front of them. So if you know they're biting it, stick with it. Where I think you change more is better is when it's really tough. But I had a co-angler, I don't even remember the guy's name, but he met with me the night before, and he said, I really need to catch one really bad. And I said, well, I'm really catching with a worm. He said, all you need to bring is a 10-inch worm, like a Zoom old monster in plum, with a 1/4 ounce weight. You put that on, I will guarantee you're going to catch one. We got in the boat, and I pulled up first spot. I throw the worm out there. I catch a 6-pounder, then a 4-pounder, and a 3-pounder. I had a spot that was hot, and I was just sitting there jacking them. I think I caught 10 on 10 throws. He was throwing a buzzbait. Then he threw a rail trap. Then he threw a crankbait. Then he threw a spinnerbait. And by that time, I had the grass so cut up he couldn't even throw there. And he said, "Can I borrow a worm?" And I handed him a worm, and then he caught about 25 the rest of the day. He ended up finishing about third.
Wow.
But he was so intent on being different, and they would not touch that stuff. So my answer is, if they're biting, I throw what they're biting. If it's tough, then I would maybe throw something different. The bite's slow. Or if they bite and they quit, you can change and get something to bite. Like, now I have had co-owners beat me because they threw something different. I got beat twice when I threw the swim bait. I pulled up on swim bait and threw it on the ledge, and they threw the Carolina rig. And both of them caught two on me, just bang, bang, first two casts. They didn't want that swim bait. But it happened so quick, sometimes it is better to be different.
Did you change after that to
drag?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I went to drag.
Yeah,
I saw right quick. And I've got where I won't start with a swim bait in the early morning anymore. I've about decided that for some reason on legs, they seem like they like dragging better. I did a few guide trips on Guntersville. I wasn't a guide, but what they did, they had some corporate trips where they needed about 40 or 50 guides for these businesses that came in. So all the locals would go do one. And I noticed doing those that a lot of times on the ledge, I bet the Carolina rig better at daylight. I found doing the trip where we'd all have a different bait on. Seemed like the guy with the Carolina rig with a lizard on it, I always caught him better early in the morning. Now, I don't know if that's true all the time, but I often start with that now.
You know what? What about when it's cloudy? What's your thoughts on a dragging bait when it's cloudy?
I've caught them when it's cloudy without any problem. Crankbaits too.
Okay.
I've gone out there and caught them in the rain on a big plug. I think when they're out there. Most of the time they bite. I prefer sunny day to fish tournaments because I think things are more stable. But I have caught them. I've caught tons of them in the clouds and rain. I fished a tournament at Logan Martin one time, caught all of them on a Carolina rig. It was called a Team Jesus Celebrity Pro-Am, and we were fishing for a truck. And me and my partner caught 22 pounds, and we won it. And we caught every one of them on Carolina rig, and it poured on us about half the day. I mean, just absolutely toad stranger rain, and we still caught them. In fact, we caught them really good.
You forgot it was raining that day too, I bet.
Do what?
You forgot it was raining that day too.
You don't even notice it when you're jacking them.
No.
When you're a tournament like that where you're fishing for something big, you could care less if it rained. You only notice stuff like that when you're not catching them.
Mm-hmm.
That's the truth. The same way with the cold.
Yep. Cold goes away when they bite.
That's right. That's the truth, man. Yeah, I've been kind of playing around with that lately, last several years about that. The same thing you just said about dragging a Carolina rig or something around early in the morning when it's low light, and then on a cloudy day where, you'd think you'd want to throw something moving like a topwater or something. There's been plenty of days where dragging something on the bottom. I don't know if it's because the crawfish maybe are still out moving around because it's lower light conditions, or I don't know.
I have no explanation, but I've seen it work.
Stephanie asked, have you ever fished against Rick Clunn?
Yes. I fished against him. When I won when I finished 5th and 1st in those 2 Bassmasters, he was in both of them. I actually talked to him in the line one day. He's a nice guy. He's he don't talk like a lot of them, but he's a nice guy.
You think Kentucky Lake will ever come back to the heydays?
I don't think it'll come back to the way it was unless the grass comes back. The problem with these lakes like Kentucky Lake is they're old and they're only so fertile. The grass makes lakes more fertile. They can hold more fish.
Right.
I mean, it's been proven over and over and over, like Pickwick. when Pickwick didn't have grass and everybody started ledge fishing, they hammered all those fish. It suddenly got hard to catch a fish. And then that grass showed up, and all of a sudden Pickwick's unreal. I used to fish a little nickeljack, and they killed all the grass in nickeljack. And it got where in these afternoon tournaments, you could win them with one fish. It got that bad. The grass came back. Within about 2 or 3 years, you could catch 60 or 70 bass with no problem in the middle of summer. The grass is just unreal changes lakes. And when you get rid of it, they'll be good for a year, and then they'll start declining. And actually, I think they get worse than they ever were until it levels back off. I think that's what happened here. I don't think you had good spawns. And then things start leveling off. They start spawning again. The lake becomes decent. And it's a decent lake, but it's not the Kentucky lake of the grass days when you catch 1,500 bass a day in the grass if you got the right place. And the ledge fishing was better when we had grass too. It was unreal. I mean, you could pull up on a place and catch 50, on a good day.
There's been rumors, and I haven't been down to Kentucky Lake in a while. Is there grass at all in the lake now?
I haven't seen it. Ever since it vanished, I've had people tell me they find it, but it always goes away. It disappears. And there are grass carp in this lake. And I don't know how they got here. I don't know if they were put in here or what, but I see them occasionally. And in some of these pictures where these guys are catching these Asians, they'll have some grass carp in their boat. In fact, one day I saw them with a whole boatload of them. The grass carp have scales. They're greener looking. They're not the slick, slimy skin like Asians. So they're a scaly fish, and they're greener looking than regular carp. So that's how you can tell them. But there are some grass carp in this lake. I think they find it and eat it up. I think that's why it's not coming back. I think there's just enough out there. If it would ever grow 1 year and get started and overcome them, then it would take off. But I think that's why it's not coming back. I think there's just enough out there to mess it up. Now, this is my theory. It may not be right, but I have seen grass carp. There's one down there at Parish Land the other day. He's swimming around the pier. He's eating the moss off those rocks.
Yeah. It seemed like if they wanted it to come back, they could plant some in the back of a bay and put some wire, put a barrier of some sort across it to where it really get developed. Or if it was growing somewhere, they could figure out a way to protect it from those carp. Because I think you're right. That makes sense. If you get just a little bit growing and then those carp figure it out, they'll eat every bit of it and it doesn't have a chance. I
don't think there's enough of them that they find it immediately. So it'll come up somewhere. And I've had many reports of it coming up. And showed it to me, sent me a picture of it. It's hydrilla. Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks later, 3 weeks, it's gone. Vanishes. And I think it takes them a day or two to find it. I don't think they're everywhere. But I think eventually they find it and eat it. That's just my theory. It may not mean anything. But that's just what I have noticed. A few grass carp. They're not everywhere, but they are out there.
How far north was the grass when you got there? Was it up by the dam?
No, I've never really seen the hydrilla. I didn't go a lot north when I first came down here when the lake had milfoil in it. It was milfoil originally. Okay. When I first came up here, it was just mats of milfoil, and this was around Parish. There wasn't a lot in Blood River, though. Not Blood River, Parish. For some reason, it didn't grow good up in Parish. But all the other bays, across the river, the bars, it had milfoil all over them. And it was matted. And, you could have flipped it. Nobody did it much back then, but it vanished. That's the first grass that went away. When it came back naiad first, with a lot of naiad in the lake. And the naiad, I found it as far as Jonathan Creek. It was up there pretty far north. But then it got replaced by hydrilla. I never saw as much hydrilla way up there. I saw it at Kenny Lake Bridge, up there where the boat ramp is. Is it Fenton? Yeah. I saw it there, but I never really saw it much. And some of these people up north probably tell you better. But the hydrilla mainly grew from just south of Blood River where the islands start, all the way down to I-40 area is where it grew the best since I've been up here. The best hydrilla was growing from about Danville down to past Birdsong. That's where all the big mats were and where it was really good. And that's when Jayville just got caught on fire because it had all that grass, and those fish were protected by it. And there was so many fish down there, it was unreal at one time.
Yeah, that's why nobody had a problem making a run from the dam all the way down there, because they knew.
I mean, that was the place to be. And 20 pounds was useless.
Yeah.
You had to have 27, 26, 28 to win those tournaments. It had to be a big stringer. There was just so many fish down there.
So we talked a little bit about this, but one of the things that shocked me when we fished that regional at Pickwick was there was very little grass. I mean, we found a little bit, in the back of that creek, but it wasn't really, A, it wasn't deep, and B, it was just really sparse. And then, Guntersville, something they're doing in Guntersville is they've been, I've heard they're starting to spray some of that grass and eliminating that grass. And I guess what I'm getting at is it just shows you that, these lakes are run for flood control or for power. They're not necessarily, or recreation more so than they are for fishing, because, it's been proven time and time again. If you got healthy population of grass, the bass, it's a great environment for everything, for the bait fish, for, the spawn, the young of the year, the reproductive cycle of the bass. The biomass is increased if you got grass in the lake. And when you limit that grass or you get rid of it, it just hurts the fishery. And I hate to see that happening in Guntersville, because, we know what's going to happen. It's going to probably go downhill slowly. So have you heard any more about that, or you've heard of that, right? I think we touched on that.
Yeah, I've heard a little bit. A long time ago, they killed the grass in Guntersville down to it was just about gone, but they didn't quite eradicate it. But it was down to just a patch here and there. The fishing declined fairly quick, but fortunately, it came back fairly quick. And then all of a sudden, the fishing exploded. And it went from hardly get a bite to catching 50, 60, 2-3 pounders. And it started off, there were just 2-3 pounders everywhere. And everybody's catching 15, 16 was winning. Next year, 18 win. Next year's 20. Next year's 23. Next year's 25. They exploded.
Yeah.
But the grass came back. They have never eradicated it since. Now, what they used to do is they agreed to spray the public use areas like the beaches, the marinas, most of the docks, stuff like that. And if they sprayed the docks, it would kill the grass out in front of the docks, and sometimes even out on the bars in front of it. But they never eradicated it. They left a fairly large amount of it. And that worked really good until the eelgrass showed up. When the eelgrass showed up, it took over in a hurry. And it grows under the water. Unless the water's shallow, it stays underwater. But everybody runs over it with their motors, and it cuts loose real easy. And that stuff's floating everywhere. And so when you go down there and try to fish, you can't hardly cast in a lot of places. There's so much eelgrass laying up there. You're very limited in what you can even throw in a lot of places, unless the wind blows it enough to get it out of there. It is a nuisance, and the fishermen hate it. The skiers hate it. Everybody hates it. And so there's a pretty hard push at Guntersville right now to get rid of the eelgrass, but to get rid of it, you about got to get rid of all of it.
Yeah, right.
So the question is, do the fishermen want to get rid of all of it to get rid of the eelgrass, and then are they going to make an agreement maybe to try to bring hydrilla or a milfoil back? Or are they going to leave it all gone? If they eradicate it, then Guntersville won't be the same way. It'll be good for a year or two, then it'll fall apart. It's already done it. Chickamauga did it when they eradicated it. It went to bad quick. Every lake, you can name any lake in the country they've eradicated, and then within 2-3 years, it's bad. And it'll come back and level off and be an average lake. If the grass comes back, it becomes really good again. But there's a lot of push at Guntersville right now to get rid of that eelgrass. And it wouldn't shock me if they give in to a point and let them spray a lot more of it than they've been doing. It's been just docks and public use. Pickwick, I don't know what they do at Pickwick. I mean, last year when you went above the trace, there was so much grass, it was almost too much. It was so thick. This year, there's none up there. It's gone.
Did you fish Pickwick this year, like in the spring or like in the early summer at all?
I did.
And there wasn't grass then? Like this year, there wasn't grass at all?
There wasn't hardly any.
Okay.
I didn't look real hard, but I didn't find hardly any. There was a few sprigs. I mean, if you go up or scan, you can see a few little bitty sprigs, like an inch or two tall, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very little. There's a little more. There is some eelgrass, which is bad. There's quite a bit of eelgrass between the trace and Bear Creek on the west side, but it don't go all the way to Bear Creek, I don't think. But over on the west side, there's a fair amount of eelgrass, and I don't like that because it may explode, end up covering a lot of Pickwick, making it bad. It was floating at places when we were down there, not in the beach, but if you went out in the river, you would see it floating.
Mm-hmm.
There was quite a bit in Waterloo. There's quite a bit of eelgrass up in Second Creek. And so they cut it up. It was floating in there pretty bad.
Yeah, it seems like you can't really, like with a hydrilla or coontail or a milfoil, you can, if you're throwing like a bladed jig or chatterbait, you can pop your stuff out of there and it comes through clean. But it seems like that eelgrass, it just gets on your hook and it screws your cast up. Yeah,
it just clogs everything. You can't hardly throw any bait in it. The best grass to fish baits in is hydrilla. It goes through hydrilla the best, then milfoil, then coontail, in that order. Yeah. Hydrilla is the easiest one to fish in because it's stiffer. But I've caught them out all of them, but it don't even compare. Eelgrass is way worse than any of those three. Mm-hmm. Way worse.
I would agree. It was that little bit that I was fishing around there was frustrating. We got several questions here. Let's fire through some of these questions here. Ryan wants to know, do you like painted blades for deep fishing on a spinnerbait?
I've used them and actually I've had some luck with them. But I haven't used them much lately for some reason. I just kind of got in a habit of throwing the same old ones. I just throw a gold silver combo so they see both of them. I came up here a long time ago and it kind of flooded a little bit, and I threw those painted blades on some of these little gravel points and absolutely murdered smallmouths with them. But it was muddy. The water was muddy, and they ate them up. But I haven't thrown them lately. I have caught them on them, though. They will bite them. I just haven't thrown it here lately. Might ought to.
I'm the same way with that muddy water. There's the painted blades have some drawing power, and especially spring, you get a spring rain and the water muddies up to like less than a foot of visibility. It's definitely a good idea to be throwing some painted blades because they will bite a painted blade.
When I lived at Logan Martin, I threw the painted blades a lot on them big spots. They absolutely crushed them in the spring. Slow rolling, about 7 foot deep. I caught some magnum spots on painted blades.
What's your opinion on wire diameter on a spinnerbait?
Well, I don't get into it too much. The one I use is 0.40. 0.40 is fairly standard on a big spinnerbait. And it works. And so I just stayed with it. Some people think, and I'm not sure if it matters or not, a slightly smaller wire has better vibration, but you're also going to be more likely to get broke off.
Yep.
So you gain a little, lose a little.
What about, Darius wants to know, do you like to night fish?
I have not night fished on this lake ever. When I lived at Logan Martin, I fished a fairly I fished quite a few night tournaments, so I have done it. I prefer daytime. I catch them better in the daytime. I prefer daytime, but I fish night tournaments, throw the big spinnerbait. I've caught some really big spots doing it down there, but I caught them better in the daytime. I mean, if you compared, fishing trips, I did better in the daytime down there. But of course, they got a lot of pressure down there at night, so that was part of it.
Sounds like Cody Yates. He says, day one at Pickwick, I watched Ed put that spinnerbait to work. Sounds like he might have been the co-angler in the boat with you, possibly.
Who did?
Cody Yates. He said,
okay,
you got to watch you throw that spinnerbait day one at Pickwick.
Right. Yep.
Let's see. There's a couple more questions down here. Stephanie's question is, do you think that grass can get so thick that the fish don't use the grass?
I tell you what, I think in the summer, when the grass is really thick and growing to the bottom, they prefer the edges because I catch them way better. If I flip grass in the summer, I catch them way better on the grass out on the edge, and usually not in the mat itself, but just out in the edge. In the fall, the hydrilla will die underneath when it gets thick. The lack of sunshine will kill the roots, and it will hollow out under it. When it hollows out, they get under it big time. And then that's when frog fishing gets really good. Like at Guntersville, if you find a hydrilla mat that the underneath part's gone, and all you got's that old slimy stuff on top, and all you got to do is find where they're at, and you can murder them on a frog. And you can catch them flipping the thicker mat better in the fall when it's loosened up under. So I think they prefer it either loosened up or to the edge. I don't think they like it as much when it's just real thick, but I don't think it gets too thick. I think that there's some get under.
Brent's got a good comment about, we were talking about them, reintroducing hydrilla, and this is kind of duh. I should have known this, but Brent said it's non-native, so it's invasive, and they'll never plant an invasive species, which totally makes sense.
I agree with him. I agree. I made a comment that people might be willing to go for it if they would agree to plant it back, but he's right. They'll never plant an invasive species.
Right.
They would go back and try to put stuff like water willow or something that grows natural.
Yeah.
If they've tried to put any back. He's right. They would do it.
Eurasian milfoil, hydrilla, and coontail. I don't know where coontail, if that's, I'm
not sure on coontail, but I know milfoil and hydrilla are non-native.
Yeah.
And he's right. They would never do that.
No, that's going to have to be like an inside job. Somebody's going to have to go to
somebody would try it, though. Somebody would try to get it back.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Tim wants to know, what is your favorite Carolina rig plastics, and do you change with the seasons?
All time, my favorite is a lizard, green pumpkin and June bug, and maybe red bug. I don't throw a lot of colors. I throw mostly green pumpkin, I throw red bug, and I throw June bug. I use green pumpkin year round. I like the red bug in the summer when they're on ledges deep. And June bug I like on darker days, like at low light, cloudy, stuff like that. But the lizard is my all-time number one. I throw 6s and 8s. If it's on a lake like Guntersville, I'll throw the 8-inch more. I have thrown a baby or a mid-sized brush hog a lot this year and had great luck with it. And in the summer, I like to throw a big worm. I like to throw a 10-inch ribbon tail, like an old monster, or a pyre worm, Berkeley. I throw them a lot. and I caught a lot of big fish on them. In fact, I won an Everstart or series, whatever they call it now, on Guntersville. I caught almost all of them, Caroline Regan's, the 10-inch plum worm. And you can really catch some big ones doing it. It's a lot better big fish bait than most people think. And I throw a straight tail worm on it in the fall some or late summer. For some reason, it seemed like straight tail late in the season.
I got a question from Jake Lawrence. He just texted me. He said, "How deep does it have to be for you to punch a mat?"
Well, at Guntersville is where I did it the most. Generally, if it's milfoil, it don't have to be deep. With milfoil, I would catch them in milfoil in 4 or 5 foot of water. What I'd say ideal was about 8. Hydrilla, it seemed like I caught them better if it's at least 8 foot. I caught them really good at 12 to 15. But I went to Seminole one year. I won a regional down there, and I was catching them in 23 foot flipping.
Really?
Flipping hydrilla. 23. I didn't know it was that deep when I was doing it. My depth finder was showing 17. Now, it wasn't a mat. It was just thick hydrilla. It hadn't matted up. When it's out that deep, it don't get thick. But they were in 17. They were in 23. When I went back a couple years later, there wasn't any grass there. My waypoints were still there. And I was shocked when I saw they were all 23 foot deep. And I caught like 50 bass out there in one little area flipping. But hydrilla, really, my favorite depths to flip are 8 to 15. But one thing I've noticed about hydrilla flipping all these years, you want to find the deepest hydrilla you can find. I catch more big ones and more schooled up in the deepest hydrilla in the lake. For some reason, in summer, that's where they seek it out. And but in hydrilla, in the fall when they drop the water, 7, 8 foot's about what I like, and milfoil 5 or 6 up to deeper.
Okay. So this question's been asked a couple times. How do you not fight a plug the last 20 yards of the retrieve when you're deep cranking? Any tips?
I don't think I have an answer for that. I don't pay attention to it.
It's just
I just really, I've cranked them so much, I don't even notice it. I don't have an answer, though. There's no answer. The faster you reel it, the harder it pulls. But when I was cranking all these years, I cranked them pretty hard. I was not a slow cranker. I cranked fast.
Yeah. There's something
you
to
still
that.
bite that crankbait, Ed?
Do what?
You still bite that crankbait?
Oh, yeah. I caught a lot of them this summer on it.
Did you?
The ledge fishing out here this summer kind of got like the old days for about a month. But the carp showed up and then they disappeared. The carp bother them. The carp don't actually bother bass. They bother the bait, I think. The bait leaves. The bait don't like them carp. They eat the same stuff carp do.
Here, Josh has, this is a good question. Any colors in plastic that you feel like you've gotten away from over the years? His example is he always used to fish the culprit red shad, but he doesn't throw it anymore. Are there any old colors that, just kind of went by the wayside? I think I like motor oil. Like motor oil used to be a popular color, and I
remember motor oil, and it's vanished pretty much.
Yeah.
When I fished Guntersville years ago, when we did a lot of worm, Billy and I did a lot more worm fishing than people knew. We caught a lot of big fish on a worm in the deep grass, 7, 8, 10 foot. We had a color that absolutely was dynamite, and it was called Red Shiner. And it was like the red shad, but it had silver glitter in it. And they absolutely loved it. And they quit making it. I don't even remember who made it anymore. It might have been Gilraker. I don't even know if they still make worms, but it was some company like that made this color. And it had the red shad look. It was dark, almost black on top with red. and but it had glitter in it. And I don't know what it was, but we actually crushed them. And the only reason we couldn't do it is because they quit making them. And I couldn't find any like it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we should have kept some and got somebody to make them, but now back then we didn't do that. Now I would. I'd think about finding somebody to make them, but I don't own one anymore.
I remember when
But yeah,
you remember when that fire tail was like a purple worm with a pink tail?
I used them for years. No, I don't even throw one anymore. I used to throw them in the pond. Cream used to make a red-headed one, and it was a darker red, and they made the pink one with the pink tip. I've caught tons of them on them, and I don't even throw them. Yeah, that's a color I quit on that was really good.
Yeah, I remember that was back when I kind of started fishing. It was really popular back then. It was the short curly tail too. You know, it wasn't a ribbon tail.
No, it was
really short little curly tail on like a grub tail on the.
And even some of the cream worms were straight tail with the pink tip. Yeah,
scoundrel. Yeah,
scoundrel. I've caught so many fish on a scoundrel, and I don't throw them anymore either. I try not to get too tore up about colors anymore because you can spend so darn much money trying to get a lot of colors. And so what I've done in the last few years is I stick to green pumpkin, June bug, and red bug 90% of the time. I throw one of the three.
Yep.
A little bit of watermelon if the water's clear, or watermelon red. That's about all I throw anymore. I may be wrong.
I'm with you on that. I'm like green pumpkin, watermelon red, and June bug. That's basically. I like that Okeechobee crawl too. Sometimes it depends on what I'm throwing.
I used to use the Okeechobee crawl on some of my flipping baits. I like that flipping.
Yeah. Dustin says, are the carp numbers really dropping, or are the fish getting better adapted to their presence?
I personally think the numbers have dropped. And I think it's dropped enough that they're not swarming everything out there. I think right now the carp choose locations in the lake. Here lately, I've noticed more of them up in Sandy than I've noticed out in the river. But they're not totally gone from the river, because you can go some areas, especially when it's calm, and all of a sudden they're everywhere. But probably in the year 16, 17, 18, somewhere in there, you could start at the mouth of Standing Rock or Ginger Bay or Panther Bay, and you could scan from the very mouth back to 7 foot, and they would be everywhere you looked. Left, right, up, and down. They would be that thick. Now when I scan, I see little clumps of them here and there. You know, they're more scattered. They're more in little pods, little schools. And when you scan out there in June, before they go out to the river, I wasn't seeing hardly any. And that's why I think the bass started going back on the ledges. I think when there was so many carp on those ledges that they covered them all up, the shad being filter feeders and the carp are filter feeders, they eat the exact same thing. The carp are out competing them big time because they're so much bigger and so many of them. I mean, the shad population is probably bigger than the carp, but the carp eat so much more food. And I think they out-compete them so bad they get away from them. So I think the shad leave. And I think the bass go with the shad. I don't think the bass could care less about a carp. I don't think they're scared of them. I think they'll get right in the middle of them. I have caught them in them. Not good, but I have. And I even saw, I don't know if I told you this, but I was out on a ledge, shallow ledge fishing with top water back when we had the mussels and the water was pretty clear. I saw some carp up in front of me, and 2 fish swam out of that school and started toward my boat. And when they got closer, I could tell they were not the same. One of them was a carp, one of them was a bass. They were swimming side by side. They were both about 3 pounds. They swam all the way to my boat. They covered about 80 feet. side by side like they were buddies. And I came all the way under me. I was sitting there looking at him. The carp got skittish and he took off. The bass just meandered off. They're not too spooky unless you do something. But those two fish were buddied up out there, and they were carp and a bass. So, but what I think is, as soon as those carp get in there thick, I think the shad leave. And I think when the shad leave, the bass leaves. What I think happens. And I think because the numbers have been going down, the fish here are trying to go back to being ledge fish as long as those carp aren't. The carp seem to be getting out there a little later, later in the summer than the bass and the shad. So that's my theory on it. I think that's the bait tries to stay away from.
That makes sense. That's a good theory. It makes complete sense. Because I don't think I know for sure a smallmouth would have no problem bumping shoulders with carp. Smallmouth are pretty aggressive. Yeah. I've caught a couple 5-pounders out of a school of carp. There was so much junk up there on the live scope that it was just stuff everywhere, but a huge number of it was carp. And I throw the spinnerbait up in there and caught a big bass, but I usually don't catch but one. I rarely catch many like that. You just get one bite, but it's kind of rare. I mean, you couldn't make a living doing that because most of the time you don't catch any. But it is possible. You live in the LBL side of the lake, right?
I do now. I used to live in Paris, but
yeah.
The guy I was renting from decided to turn it was in a basement of the house. It was a nice place to rent. It had a good carport, but he decided to make his basement his office. He started a new company. When I first rented, he didn't have a company. So he was going to make that. And he gave me a long time. He gave me a couple of years before I had to move. But I found a good arrangement over here, so I moved to this side.
Yeah. Well, I know just from kind of reading a few things like the LBL side of the lake has got supposedly he's got like some paranormal type activity and stuff. And I know I was over there where you're at. You're kind of out in the woods.
Oh yeah.
You ever think about Sasquatch or Bigfoot?
No. Never thought about it, but I wake up to turkeys and deer all the time.
Okay.
I'm on the door and had
thinking about it
turkeys take off.
Yeah. Yeah, because you're out there a little bit.
Now, there's plenty of wildlife where I'm at. I mean, I could probably open the door right now and see a deer right outside the door. They feed on this grass right here on the end of this house all the time. And I've opened the door and scared a whole bunch of turkeys off. They were feeding right there by the door.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's plenty of stuff over here. But I know they had a bear or two showed up in the LBL not long ago.
Just black bears, I guess.
People spotted them. A regular bear.
Yeah.
There was one in Paris too. He went right through the town.
Yeah, they've been showing up. We had just the county north of us. Well, actually, the county I live in too, in Missouri. There's been some bear sightings over the last 10 or 15 years.
I think they're getting more used to people, and they're starting to increase their population.
There was some over at Kincaid this year.
That's right. There was over in Southern Illinois. Huh. So have you heard though? Are you familiar with what I'm talking about over there in the LBL? Some of the people say they see some stuff over there, like some weird stuff. Have you heard any of that?
I have not heard it, but I'm not trying
to creep you out or anything.
See, I'm still I go to Paris and coach, those kids some tennis, and I don't talk to many people over here. I'm still a Paris person more than I am a Dover person, and I just haven't talked to him. I've never heard it over here.
Well, you're probably better off not to inquire too much.
I might not want to know
it. That's funny. Well, we're doing a giveaway right now. That's kind of one of our. We're going to give away a $25 Baitworks gift card, and usually the way we do that is I make a reference to Sasquatch, and then everybody starts guessing a number between 1 and 200, and whoever guesses the number that I have written down, they get the $25 Baitworks gift card. So
that sounds good.
Yeah, I just thought I'd slip that in there for you. What's your? We'll ask a couple more questions and we'll wrap this up. What's something that's come along the last couple of years, and we've talked about this before, but what's your thoughts on live scope? It's like it's a hot topic, but I think you've been fishing for a long time. You've seen fishing before the technology came along. What do you think about all that?
Well, I've got mixed emotions about it. Personally, I really enjoy it. I'm an explorer by nature. And when I go fishing, I almost always am looking for new places. Almost every day I'll try some new place. I'm just an explorer. And looking at that live scope, boy, it lets me do that. I can see what's down there. So now I'm looking for the stumps and the rocks and all the stuff. And watching the fish intrigues me. And so I enjoy it. And I enjoy fishing with it. That's my good side. I like it. The bad side is I think it's not good for tournaments where you have co-anglers.
Yeah.
The co-anglers are at a distinct disadvantage because they really don't have, sometimes there's fish out there, but because they're in depths that are hard for them to throw to, they have trouble catching them and they can't see them. So it's been bad for co-anglers, and it could be a big issue for BFLs and series tournaments because they're losing their co-anglers. And the only alternative is to go boater draws or solo. And the co-angler boater deal was a great thing. When it went from boater draws back in the old days to co-anglers, everybody loved it. Nobody wanted to go back. Now, when we were all boater draws, nobody thought about it. But since they've had it, they don't want to go back. So it's hurting that aspect of it. And I don't know how to change that. I mean, it's going to hurt it. As far as fishing in circuits where there's no co-anglers, I would probably vote to keep it because I like it. It's fun, but overall, I'm not sure it's a good thing for the tournament scene because of the co-anglers and all that. I'm afraid it's going to ruin BFLs because of if they don't fish, then they have no choice but to change the formats. And it's got to either be solo or some kind of buddy system. And a lot of people don't like that. They don't want a buddy. I don't think they want a buddy system where you're sharing weights. There's a lot of negative to that. And so I got mixed emotions, but on my end of it, I do it and I love it. And, but I also see the negativity in the other parts of it.
You guys are both fishing BFLs at Kentucky, and I know Gabe, you're down at Ozarks as well, and some of them. How many boater draws are there right now?
It's a lot worse than the Ozarks. It's not even close. Here, I don't think it's that bad. I think it was a little bit. I know there was a few, but in the Ozarks, I saw where, if I remember right, they had some like 60-40 draws. Where there were like 20 boater draws, and there was. In the Mississippi division, I was wanting to fish the tournament at Pickwick, the 2-day, the super, and they had 70 boaters and 60 co-anglers. So I didn't get in because I couldn't pair up with anybody. 3 of the boaters dropped out. They ended up with 67, or something like that, 68. 2 of them, maybe it's 2 of them. But, that's 10 off.
Yeah. It's changed, because I remember.
Wait, hold on. The Pickwick Super only had 60 boats in it?
No. Not the. Oh yeah,
we're talking about the Mississippi division Super.
Yeah,
and they had 70 boaters signed up and 60 co-anglers when I called them.
Wow! So even that number's low. Even the boater side, that's low.
Oh yeah. What's weird is 200 people fished as a co-angler in that division, but they didn't fish all the tournaments. I looked it up. They had 200 people fished at least one tournament as a co-angler, but only 60 fished the last tournament.
How many
try to go
in that same metric? How many were on the boater side?
I think 180 boaters fished at least one tournament.
Wow. And then only have that many at the super tournament. That's crazy.
I guess they didn't want to go to Pickwick. You know, a lot of times how many stay in, it depends on where they're going and where they want to go there.
Right. Now
that, you know, the LBL is one of their best divisions right now. It's kind of kept its numbers where a lot of them are losing them.
How's
the Ozarks? The Ozarks are bad. The Guntersville area is kind of keeping theirs, I think, but a lot of the divisions are losing them.
Illini struggling?
I haven't looked at theirs, but they've never had great numbers.
Mm-hmm.
I fished a couple. One year I wanted to go to whatever regional it went to. I can't remember where it was. It might have been Kentucky Lake.
Mm-hmm.
And I fished the Illini division. Kind of enjoyed it. It was different. But they didn't have a huge number. They probably had more than they have now.
Yeah.
But when I first started,
it's always 100 something. You know, 100. Even like the fourth and fifth tournament of the year, it's still like 116 or 120 something.
In Illini or
no, in the LBL division.
Right.
In Guntersville, when I was fishing many years ago, you had to sign up early. You didn't get in. Co-angler or boater.
Right.
They had a waiting list.
It was 220. Was it 220th full field?
Yeah, and they had a waiting list.
Yeah.
And so we had to sign up early. And in the original days, there was way more co-anglers than boaters. When it first started, it was boaters they didn't have.
Yeah, right.
Well, when we
in
14, it was 14 when we started fishing the BFLs as co-anglers. You, like you said, you had to either find a link or you had to sign up early.
That's up until like 3 years ago. There was always always waiting on boaters.
Yeah.
It's only been it hadn't been long because I remember distinctly they were always looking for boaters unless it was full. And we never even linked back in the day because there was so much overflow. Then the co-anglers they started linking because they didn't have enough boaters. And now it's the opposite. Now they don't have enough co-anglers. But it's because of the way it's changed. I guess that's the main reason.
I think you're right. We did have a winner. Josh Stroop is the winner. Josh, get a hold of me on Facebook or Instagram, and I'll get you taken care of tomorrow. I know there's some divisions like like Del Hollow. They're good luck getting co-anglers to fish Del Hollow because that's pretty much a scoping deal, for the most part. Depending on the time.
It's really bad on all the Clearwater lakes where the fish suspend. So it's bad at Del Hollow. It's bad in East Tennessee. Those lakes out there, they're real clear. It's really bad in the Ozarks. But you can still catch fish on Tennessee River without scoping. You can still catch them. Now, scoping has changed things because there's certain times of the year you can't beat it. It's hard to beat it. But like I say, I love it. I love to do it. I have absolutely enjoyed going out more since I started doing it. And I do see the negative with the co-angler deal. That's the number one problem. The only other thing I don't like about it, if everybody starts doing it, every single boater's doing it, all of a sudden everybody's fishing the exact same fish. We're all going to be fishing stumps, or we're all going to be fishing brush, or if it's at Table Rock or over there, everybody's going to be out there on the bait out in 40, 50 foot of water, and every boat out there is doing the same thing. I think that takes something away from it when everybody's fishing the same way. It's like ledge fishing. Ledge fishing got to be real frustrating because everybody on the lake was doing it. And they're fighting over the holes. They're getting mad at each other. All that junk was going on. And I got where I almost quit doing it because of that. People pulling up on you after you get there first, or it's just a lot of bad started coming with it. So I fear that eventually everybody's going to be scoping. At least everybody can figure out how to do it. It's not as easy as it's taught. I mean, you just can't go out there and just go catch them. It takes some doing. It takes some practice. It's not easy. A lot of people think it's easy. I don't think it's easy. Now, it's not hard to go throw at stumps or something, but if you're talking about just fishing for bass, like on Kentucky Lake, it's hard to go out there and just say, I'm going to look for bass all day and throw at them. You'll spend a lot of time not catching anything. But anyway,
well, you've had a lot of, somebody like you that traditionally has fished offshore and looked for those places where fish set up at different times of the year. That's an advantage for you to use that technology. I mean, you know where to look because you've known where to look before the front looker was out there, before live scope was out there. So you can just kind of implement it into, you're fishing a lot of the same stuff, I would imagine, that you were, before live scope, but now you're just being able to kind of see what's going on down there. Is that fair?
Yeah. It's kind of, since I've been live scoping, I've learned a few things about bass that I never dreamed of. And one of them is where they bed. I found out that a lot of them bed a lot deeper than I ever dreamed. I never thought about them being out there 8-9 foot deep, 7, that deep. But yeah, the live scope lets you see everything. That's what's neat about it, really. You see what's going on down there.
Mm-hmm.
And you can learn a lot about fish, and there's a lot of stuff we thought was wrong. One of them is that you couldn't catch suspended fish, and it's absolutely not true. You can. And
heck with that, that's the easiest fish to catch.
It appears they are. But I know what's going to happen on this lake. It's already starting.
Yeah, it is.
So many people are going to be fishing the same way. I mean, It's going to be a rat race out there because there's only so many places, just like so many ledges. There's only so many good places, and they're going to be, next thing you know, we're all going to be all over each other. That's going to be the negative of just fishing. And the people that are the best at it will still win.
Dustin's got a question here. Do you think the new regional format is going to help or hurt the BFL? Also, how many from each regional will make the All-American? Well, I know that's 3.
It's 3.
This the All-American.
It was 6, right?
Yes. Yep. They're taking the same number. They just spread it out a lot more. I think it makes it harder to make the All-American for one reason. You're going to go to a regional that's relatively close to the lake's going to it. That's what they're advertising. They're not going to make you travel as far, although the LBL didn't get that. We're still traveling. Dale Hall's not close. That's 4.5 hours, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty good trip. But I don't think they wanted to just sit us down on our lake. But what's going to happen is because everybody's close to the regional they're going to, all the best fishermen on those lakes are going to be in the regional. And all the sticks are going to be out there going for 3 spots. And for that reason, I think it's going to be harder to make the All-American. Of course, there'll still be a number make it, but you're going to have to beat the best ones on that lake because they're going to be there.
Well, it's just like the old days, what you were just talking about, the Illini division, when most of the Illini is just a couple hours up the road for you. Now you're on the southern half of Tennessee Lake on Kentucky Lake down in Tennessee. So it's a little bit farther jaunt for you, but there's a lot of guys that would go fish a different regional because it was on our different division because it was on their home lake.
Yeah. That's why I did it. And, it was 2 to 4 hours on each trip.
Right.
Green Lake about 2 hours, a dam about 1.5 hours, and Shelby was 4.5. Right. It was doable, but not everybody did it. But I think if you put them closer, there'll be more people do it. There's more people going to try to make it. The regionals are going to be harder to get in. You got a lot more people are going to get to fish the regionals. I don't know. It'll help the overall thing if everybody wants to go to a regional. You know, if that's your goal to fish the regional, then it may increase the numbers overall. If it's not, I don't know if it will or not.
They're gonna make more money off of it. I know that.
They'll make more money because there'll be more people at the regionals.
Yeah.
That's a given. Because you're gonna take 130, something like that, from 2 divisions to make a regional. You got 12 of them. So that's way more people.
What do you just have to fish your tournaments to qualify for regional?
Pretty much.
Yeah, you got to be because they're taking 65 from each division. There's a lot of divisions everybody in is going to go.
Yep.
They're not even going to have to do much except show up. So it's going to be easier. It's easier to go to a regional. It's going to be harder to go to All American, is the way I see it.
Yeah.
It'll be much easier to go to the regional.
Heck, as a coach, you just pay your money in 5 tournaments and you make a regional.
Yeah, you have to fish 2. Well, I don't know. I think they say you have to fish 2. Well, no, I don't think you do. I think I'm wrong. I think in your division, it's just matters where you place. I don't believe you have to fish a certain number. You have to fish. You used to have to fish a certain number to go to wild card, but they changed the wild card too. It appears you can go to wild card unless you make the All American. So the wild card's going to have to be on a huge lake because they could have 1,000 boats in it.
Be like
if it's the way it reads, if you don't make the All American, you can fish the wild card. That's the way I saw it.
Be like
if that is true, if that's the way it's supposed to be, then everybody that don't make the All American is eligible. So if you want a second chance, the wild card could be a really big deal.
It'd be like a high school tournament, you know.
And so it's going to have to be on a big lake now to accommodate the crowd it potentially could have. And I don't know how many people really want to do it. It may not be that way. It's going to be interesting because it's a big change. You know, how it affects the numbers.
Huh.
I guess they're hoping they'll get more co-liners because they'll all be able to make the regional. That may be part of it, trying to get more co-liners that way.
There's some strategy in this. You know, it's got to be.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree.
Have they bumped the cost to get in?
I don't think so.
No, it'll still be $165 for the regional. It costs the same as a super tournament.
What's your tournament fees? Is it still
110 on the $220 on the boater?
It's $220 on the pro end. That's what it was this year. They didn't change that. That's good because price increases are never popular. So they didn't change that. Basically, what they did made it a whole lot easier to go to a regional.
Yep.
And a whole lot easier to be in the wild card. So it's way easier to get to the next levels. But it's because of that, more people make it harder to go to the All American.
Yep. And if you think about it, Ed and JB, it's like the tourism board, when you're trying to pitch a regional to whatever lake it is, instead of bringing, 45 from each division, you're bringing 60. You're bringing 20 more co-anglers and 20 more boaters times 2, because there'll be 2 divisions in each regional. So you're able to tell that county, that the tourism, hey, I'm going to bring an additional 80 people to your town, which they're going to spend that much more money on food, lodging, and fuel and all that stuff. So that's another thing that they can use to leverage a town. Maybe I don't know how that works. I mean, I know a lot of tournaments that the town pays money to have them come. I don't know how the regional works, but either way, I
think the money deal is buried. I don't know a lot about that. I can't really say a whole lot about that, but there's going to be a whole lot more people involved in the region. The regions are going to go to more places, and there are going to be a lot more communities and lakes involved with it.
Yeah. What do you think the payback? Any idea what the payback is on the regionals? Did it change? Do you know?
Well, it first place lowered a little bit for the boater, but their saying that's because they don't have as many people. You know, like a full regional would have 200 boats right now. A full regional now is going to have about 130. So it's 70 less boats projected. So they're giving away a Phoenix boat to the pro winner, but they did give away a boat plus a little bit of cash. And then the co-owner was getting a boat. Now they're going to get cash. So
Like
the first place prize is less.
Yeah.
Not greatly, but it is less. But they're basing that on the fact they don't have many people. You know, if you got 200 versus 130, that's a different number. A whole lot less money coming in. So I think that's the reason behind that.
Andy's got a question. He says, what does the winner of the co-angler get at the All-American? I don't even know, Andy. I don't even know. I didn't even really know going into the regional what the co-angler won. I was just trying to make the freaking All-American, and I got to the position where I had a chance to win, and that's when my boater on day 3 said, "Hey, I think the co-angler gets a brand new Phoenix boat." So that's basically when I found out that I had a chance to win a boat. But I don't know about the All-American, what they win.
I don't know the number is. I really don't know, but it's a pretty good prize.
Yeah.
I think the boaters are like 100,000 plus. There's contingency money can make it a lot higher. I'm gonna say the co-owner's probably about half, but I don't know for sure. I can't answer it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it's just you can look it up.
Generally, it's about half, but I don't know about the All-American. All-Americans always have pretty good prize money, though.
Yeah, we were talking about that the other night, Ed, about how it's changed. Like when the first time you went, or some of the early times you went, how they just basically spoiled you. And now they cut back.
God, it was unreal back when, you know, they had Ranger and Walmart and Chevrolet, all those good sponsors, and Ranger brought brand new boats to every one of them. And they've kind of gone away from that. There's other reason they went away from it. You know, you're taking 45, 50 boats and making them all used boats. But
that's true. That's true.
That's an unreal expense. And you know, since Forrest Wood's gone and all Irvin Jacobs and all them people that they've gone away. Nobody does that anymore, not any division that I know of. But at one time it was unreal what they did. It was a really unbelievable thing. It's still a really good tournament though.
Yeah, you got a jacket too. I saw one of your older pictures in a jacket. Like an
I wore that All-American jacket for 10 or 12 years, and one day I let it catch on something and just ripped it wide open, and I ceased to use it. That was my favorite jacket, my old All-American jacket I got a long time ago. I think I got it at Lake Hamilton where you're headed.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we had them brand new Rangers at Lake Hamilton. I think that was my first All-American, was at Lake Hamilton.
You still got that jacket?
No.
Oh,
I didn't keep it for a keepsake. It ripped so bad, I just got rid of it.
Oh, I was gonna sneak it away from you and wear it a couple weeks before the tournament for good luck. Good stuff. Well, we've been going for a couple hours. We'll wrap this up, I guess. There's a lot of good. We talked about a lot of good stuff. I think we covered. I had some stuff written down. I think we pretty much kind of covered. Oh, I got one more thing. I like to ask this question. If you could fish one bait for 2 hours and the fish were going to bite it, what would that bait be?
And they're going to bite it?
Yeah, and you could tie on whatever you wanted out of anything out there and go to the lake, and for 2 hours the fish were just going to smash it. What would that bait be?
I'd probably throw something like a lizard, because I land most of them when they bite that thing. Spinnerbait or a lizard or something that hooks them and catches is what I would use. They aren't going to get off.
Texas rig lizard, or how would you have it?
Yeah, Texas rig lizard or a spinnerbait. Those two baits catch the majority of the biters.
Yeah,
a high percentage. But I would say probably the lizard catches a high percentage. I don't know. In the spring, that minnow catches them really good on them smallmouths. They don't hardly lose any of them. But I'd probably just throw a lizard. My old standby, I've been fishing for 40 years.
That's underutilized. I still think that's underutilized. You know,
It is. It's an unreal bait. It is always caught them. They've never got used to it.
You still fish it?
Oh, yeah. I got quite a few of them in my house. I've got a few hundred of them probably.
Huh. You fish
I throw them every spring. Texas rigged, and I throw them Carolina rigged a good bit of this when I throw a Carolina rig in the summer and spring. I caught the hound out of them at Lake Hamilton with it. If you might want to tie one on.
All right.
I caught like 60 bass a day when I pre-fished up there.
I will make an order for sure. I've got some. I've got some. I break them out. Actually, I had an okay day with them this spring, but my buddy Joe that I stay with at Kentucky Lake, he loves fishing that black and blue lizard, that black lizard with a blue tail on Kentucky Lake. Right. Yeah, he loves fishing that.
You know, I've never thought it all that much. I've been a green pumpkin June bug guy for so long that that's kind of what I throw.
Yeah. Well, whatever you got confidence in. I think if you got confidence in something, you're going to put it in the right spots and you're going to keep it in your hand. And eventually you're going to find some fish that want to bite it. You know, that's
right
on it. So,
confidence is a big deal.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. Well, congrats on the Jetta Marine tournament and, good luck in what do you got? USA Bassin Championship? Is that what you said?
The USA Bassin has their regional at Kentucky Lake Sunday out of Paris. So I'm fishing there.
Just a one-day deal?
Yes.
Okay.
And then they have their senior division championship about 2 weeks later. I think it's the second full week of November. It's out of the dam. So I've got those two left.
Okay.
And then after that, it'll just be hit a USA Bass and a local tournament here and there if the weather's decent.
Okay, cool.
That's 5,000 guaranteed this weekend, right?
Yes.
Nice. Well, you're on a roll.
I'm not catching them too good right now. Well, it has really slowed down the last 2 or 3 days. So I don't know, but we'll see. Of course, everybody says I sandbag all the time. I've been accused of that big time. I'll tell them I only caught one on Friday and one on Thursday and one on Wednesday. And then if I catch 20 pounds on Saturday, you sandbagging again. They know they call me the sandbagger.
You're just sampling, you know. You don't want to hook them all. You're just kind of gonna get a feel of it.
Actually, there's a lot of truth to that. I do sample. Yep. I seldom catch.
Yep.
I can stay off. One reason I've done good in terms of all these years, I stay off of them pretty good. If I know where they're at, I don't mess with them. I don't go out there and just try to catch them, see how many I can catch. If I know there's a school of winners, I stay away from them. I don't even want to be seen near them. So you will not see me around the fish I'm going to try to catch. I'm not going to practice on them, and I'm not going, like there's certain stumps and brush piles I never practice on. But they're getting fish so much more now, it's getting harder.
Yeah. And then when it's game day, you put the hammer down on them.
Yeah, I change. I go hard at it.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I don't sore mouth hardly any fish except to hunt a new place. You got to catch one or two.
Mm-hmm.
But if I catch a big one, I usually don't throw no more. If it's a 2-pounder, I'll throw again. But if it's a big one, I'm gonna fish the spot, regardless if it's just one or what.
Yeah, there's a reason there's big fish there.
Yeah, and a lot of times you'll go back and catch one. You don't always, but a lot of times you do.
Good deal. All right, that's good. Anything you want to say before we shut this sucker down, Ed? I appreciate you coming on here and hanging out with us.
I think I've said about all I can think of. I do better when you ask me a question and I just top it off my head a lot of times. But I love to talk fishing. Everybody knows me, knows that. I can talk it all day. I just enjoy talking about it.
Oh, I got one more thing. I know we're trying to wrap this up, but I had written down that another question that I really wanted to run by you since you're on here. What has been, is there a most memorable tournament that sticks out in your head?
Yeah, that's a tough question to answer. You know, I won a Federation state championship one time at Pickwick, and there's no way I would have ever thought I could have won it with the weight I won it with, which was 14 pounds on 2 days. I remember that one because it was so unbelievably tough to get a bite. And I remember the first day I caught 11 pounds and I was in third, 14 was winning. And the second day I caught 3 pounds and something, just barely past the 14. And I said, well, I was trying to make the state team, Federation regional and all that. And I come in there and I went up about an ounce or two, well, a few ounces, almost a pound, but not much. And I had to wait the whole tournament. I was in first flight. There was 200 boats at Pickwick. And nobody caught them. Like the biggest stringer that came in was like 2 pounds. And I ended up winning the tournament. And I only caught 3 pounds the second day, and I came from behind. It's hard to come from behind with 3 pounds, a little over 3 pounds, and win a tournament with 200 boats in it. That was the most amazing one I've ever. Now, you know, the biggest one I ever won was the Bassmaster Invitational, but it was different. I was catching a lot of fish. It was a different scenario. But that one at Pickwick, it was the biggest grind. We practiced in 100-degree weather the first week of October and fished in 40-something degree highs, 35, 40-mile-an-hour north wind. I speared waves. Not real bad, but I speared a few. I had a guy about my age now with me, and it beat him to death, you know, getting back, because I was all the way down there at Indian Creek. And in fact, I went all the way down to State Line Island. I went that far down, and it was unbelievably rough. I mean, it was unbelievable. And ended up winning, and I thought there's no way. And then waited out for 2 hours of weigh-in where you got about a 10-ounce lead over people that are only half pound behind you. But anyway, that's one that sticks in my mind.
That's crazy. Huh. That was when was that? In the fall, I guess?
It was. I've actually got the trophy sitting here in my room. It was 2001, and the fishing dates were October 4, 5, 6, and 7. The same time we were down there.
Yeah. Huh.
And the high temperature was 47, the lows in the low 30s after being 100 in every practice day.
Holy cow. Yeah, that was like a grinder all the way around.
That cold front was a shock to those fish. I mean, it shocked them. I caught most of my first day fish in the first 15 minutes. I pulled up to a ledge and caught about 4. And after I caught that many, the waves were breaking over front of my boat. I couldn't stay no more. They were actually breaking into, on to the top of the depth finders. So I had to leave. I managed to catch one more, and they weighed like 11 pounds. The next day, I was really limited in where I could fish. But I Carolina rigged them with a green pumpkin lizard. That was the killer bait. Deep. That week of October, I was catching them deep.
Huh. That's awesome.
I was catching 16, 17 pounds a day till the cold front. Oh, I had a little accident there.
It only took 2-something pounds. Huh. You never know, man. You never know until you get in there what everybody else has got.
No.
Sometimes it goes the other way too. You got like 26
Yeah, I've
pounds.
seen that happen. You go in there.
Yeah.
I remember BFL at Guntersville, I had about 25 pounds in a draw, finished 5th. I said, my gosh, usually that wins. Even at Pickwick, the weight I had in the regional would put me in the first, second, or third place in every regional I've ever fished.
This year.
What I caught this year at Pickwick would put me in the top 3, I think, in every regional I've ever fished. And I didn't make the cut. I missed it by 1, so.
Wow.
You never know. But gosh, everybody was catching them, and they're so good at it now. It just, those guys were putting the hammer down on them.
Yeah. Yeah, it was unbelievable weights. Unbelievable weights. In fact, I'm editing. I got the day 1 practice video coming out tomorrow where I fish with Brock Bila, and then I'm working on the video that you and I did, Ed.
Right.
We were talking about it. It's going to come out Friday, but we were talking about what we thought it would take to make day 3, and you were thinking, I think you were thinking mid-30s for 2 days is what you said in there, and I was thinking 15 for 2 days on the co-side.
I don't remember. I don't remember the exact what I said, but
yeah, it took
more than I thought. I know that
it did, because you had almost 18 both days, right? You had you had high 17 and low 18 or something.
My total was 35-15, which would be like having 18 one day and 17-15 the other day.
Yeah, right.
Which is a pretty good stringer in a regional. I mean, I fished some at Seminole that wins the tournament. The 2-day total would win the tournament. In fact, I fished some at Pickwick where it would have won it.
Yeah. And you were 2 pounds out of 12th place.
2 pounds off the cut at 13. And if I'd had that same weight about 10 years ago at Pickwick, I would have won the tournament for 3 days. That weight would have won a 3-day tournament. And I fished a bunch of them where 30-something pounds would put you way up there. I don't think I've ever fished one where it wouldn't make it. But after the first day, when I saw the weights, I knew it was going to be a lot harder than I thought.
Brent said
and nobody faltered
2 years ago.
They did not falter, the guys. Hell, I was in 14, and I caught 17, 12, and nobody faltered. Only one guy dropped below me. That moved me up 1 spot. All the rest of them stayed high. I mean, they caught them. They knew how to do it, and they made it work.
It's amazing. Games.
Hats off.
Changed. Yep. Exactly.
And congratulations, Mateo. That sucker is really good.
Yeah.
And Jake, Jake and Mateo, they've become 2 really, really good fishermen. Of course, Clint Knight and all that, and several others. But they can catch them.
You got your hands full down there, Ed.
Do what?
I said you got your hands full down there now.
Oh, yeah. That's making me work harder.
Yeah, that's right. You're keeping up with them, man. You're hanging.
Oh, yeah.
You just
I'm hanging.
You just kind of remind his boss every once.
I'm trying to make Randy Blockett. He said old people can't catch them. I'm trying to prove him wrong.
Yeah.
He's wrote several articles that said if you're old, you can forget about it. You're not going to win any tournaments. I don't know if y'all have seen those articles, but he's had several. I aim to make him wrong.
It's just determination, man. If you want to put in, if you put in the work, you can do whatever you want. That's what. I
don't think age has anything to do with it, except a lot of people, when you get my age, don't have as much energy, or the drive to do it. But I still have it.
As long as you got sweet tea, you'll be all right.
Yeah, that's all I need.
Yep, sweet tea and lizards. Good.
Yeah.
All right, we're going to shut it down, Ed. I appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight, and once again, thanks, Ed, for hanging out with us.
Well, I certainly enjoyed it. It was different, but I enjoyed it.
Thanks, Ed.
All right, we'll talk to you all soon.
Okay.